Chapter 81. Awake. Chapter 81. Awake. When Yimo woke up, it was already midnight. Suddenly, he felt that there was someone in his arms, and although there was no light on, Yimo's spirit sense made him realize that this person was Yun Bing. Before Yimo fainted for the second time, he knew that he was at Yun Bing's home. Therefore, he had closed off all his sense to recover. If he hadn't done that, there would have been more drawbacks. Perhaps it might have even resulted in him forever staying at the second stage of Kai gathering. After discovering who it was, he couldn't care too much. He didn't even say one sentence before going into a cultivating state. He didn't know how long he closed off his sense for, but he didn't expect to wake up with Yun Bing in his arms. But soon, Yimo understood what had happened. Yun Bing must have wanted to lean on the bed and sleep for a while, but after she had fallen asleep, it was cold at night, so she subconsciously moved towards the blanket. From how she didn't take her clothes off, it could be seen that she didn't have a good sleep for the past few days. Although Yimo knew that Yun Bing saved him yesterday, he couldn't understand why Yun Bing would try to find him before dawn, since his relationship with Yun Bing was stale. Yun Bing even harbored enmity toward him, so why would she be willing to save him? Yimo covered Yun Bing with the blanket and took her hand away as he prepared to get down. Regardless of whether or not Yun Bing saved him because she knew him, he couldn't stay here. If Yun Bing woke up and wanted to cause even more trouble for him, he would be scared of having to hurt her. After all, she had saved him, and if Yun Bing hadn't brought him back, then the consequences would have been dire no matter who had found him. This time, he had been overconfident. Although he knew that his power wouldn't be the highest here, he was still a bit shocked when he met an actual opponent. After all, people didn't cultivate Kai here. Just when Yimo wanted to get off the bed, he found that the corner of his clothes was tightly grabbed by Yun Bing, so he simply checked up on his wound. He had already cured the wound of broken hand bone, and as for the wound on his back, Yun Bing had put some cream he didn't recognize, and together with his spirit Kai, it was pretty much healed already. He looked at his clothes and realized that the shirt was a bit weird. He even started to suspect if this was Yun Bing's clothes. Yimo didn't bother to break away from Yun Bing's hand, he just awkwardly took the shirt off. He suddenly remembered about his bag and wondered if Yun Bing had brought it back. After all his things were inside there. His money, his clothes, his documents, and even a lot of medical herbs inside, but those weren't even the most significant part. The remaining seeds of his silver heartgrass were also inside the bag, and those were his most valuable belongings. It would be over if he lost these seeds. Besides, a piece of purple heartvine was also inside. Thinking about this, Yimo scanned out with his spirit sense, but immediately, his heart sunk as he didn't find his bag in the house. That meant that Yun Bing didn't bring back his bag. Now, he didn't have clothes, and Yun Bing didn't bring his bag back either. He didn't even have a scent on him. Yimo even wanted to immediately go out and look for his bag. After all, the contents of the bag were too important for him. But before this, he had to ask Yun Bing. He couldn't care if Yun Bing was still asleep and immediately started shaking her. Yun Bing was shaken awake by Yimo and immediately screamed in shock, but soon she understood that it was Yimo and quickly covered her mouth. When she took her hands away, she then found out that she was grabbing a shirt and was the one who put this shirt on Yimo. Yun Bing blushed and crawled up awkwardly. "Oh. You're awake." Yimo nodded. "Yes, thank you for saving me. I want to know if you have brought my bag back." "Bag?" Yun Bing frowned. Last night when she dragged Yimo onto the car, he seemed to have something in his hand. She didn't really look at it and just stuffed it into the car. She didn't know if that was the bag Yimo was talking about. However, since Yimo asked about that bag immediately when he woke up, it meant that bag was paramount for him. Yun Bing immediately turned on the bed lamp and saw Yimo, who sat there, was frowning. She had a sudden awkward feeling. They were sitting side by side at the head of the bed at midnight while Yimo was shirtless. They looked exactly like a couple. She suddenly thought of the scene described in prose. She forgot who wrote it, but it described this scene. Midnight, the husband sat up and ignited a cigarette. He smoked, and his eyes were frowning. "I know, it's for his child's school fees tomorrow." Child? Yun Bing suddenly thought of Ting Ting. That family was really cruel. It had been a few years already, but they wouldn't even let her see Ting Ting once. What's wrong? Yimo looked at Yun Bing's changing face. But before Yun Bing could answer, he asked again, did you remember where you put the bag? Yun Bing suddenly came to reality. She didn't expect her to wander off. She hurriedly said, I remember I put some stuff in the trunk. I don't know if it was your bag since I was in a rush at the time and forgot. I'll check the car now. She was about to go out after she finished. Yimo quickly stopped her and said, Wait, I'll go, just tell me where your car is. Yun Bing shook her head. You must not go out, they are looking for you everywhere. If you go out now, they will apprehend you. You know what I did? Yimo looked at Yun Bing in surprise. He thought about how she knew that he killed Song Xiaotan. Yun Bing rolled her eyes towards Yimo and said, Yesterday morning, 6 people were killed in a mansion in Ninghai, and don't tell me you don't know about that. I just went out to look for you but met you on the way. Yimo, you're an adult now. Is killing something that should be done? Why don't you use your brain and think? Impulsiveness is a devil. Sigh, I have no idea what's going to happen to you, but I know that you'll be living a life on the run. After she had finished, Yun Bing shook her head. Although she approved of Yimo saving people, she still thought it was unfathomable that Yimo killed 6 people. Yimo didn't care about the latter part of what Yun Bing said. He just asked, How do you know I killed? Why did you go look for me? And, how would you know I was there? Hearing Yimo's words, Yun Bing's face showed some guilt. Yimo, sorry, I was looking for you to apologize to you. I know that you were saving me that day as well, but I only understood when I found the SD card from the camera. The reason I went to look for you yesterday was that I saw that Shi Ying on the news of Ninghai Technology University and thought that he looked like you. I was prepared to go there, but fortunately, I met you on the road. Looks like me. Yimo thought that he used a layer of Kai to cover his face at the time. They shouldn't be able to capture a clear image. How did Yun Bing know? I just noticed his face was similar to yours, that's why I tried my luck and went out to look for you. Tell me, are you Shi Ying? Yun Bing seemed to have forgotten about other things now. Yimo nodded, admitting that he was Shi Ying. He also understood why Yun Bing was saving him and didn't look for trouble. It was due to that card. Since you know I'm a killer, why aren't you scared? Are you that calm with every killer you meet? Yimo suddenly asked. Yun Bing was stunned. She now realized that she really wasn't scared of him at all, she was only concerned and didn't even think about being scared. Had she always been that bold? But when she was with Yimo, she really didn't feel scared at all. Now that Yimo asked, she couldn't help but to shake her head and say, I was just a bit worried about you, but I wasn't scared, perhaps because you had saved me before, or maybe it was that you only killed the people that deserved to die. Chapter 82, Yun Bing's Sigh. Chapter 82, Yun Bing's Sigh. Hearing Yun Bing's words, Yimo remained silent for a while. He had overestimated himself yesterday. He only went there because he was curious about Hu Qiu at the time and didn't expect Song Xiaotan to be there as well. However, Ning Qingxue was injured because Song Xiaotan sent people there, so he couldn't resist but to kill him. This had greatly deviated from his original plan. Originally, it wasn't much even if he killed Song Xiaotan. He could leave Ninghai during that night, but he hadn't expected Hu Qiu to be so much stronger than he had estimated and ended up heavily injured. If Yun Bing didn't bring him back, perhaps he would be at the Song family compound already. Even if he had a strong background, he wouldn't be able to leave once he was in the Song family's hands, much less since he had no background anymore. What to do now? Yimo suddenly realized that he had no way left right now. Ninghai must be in lockdown. If he had been in the 3rd stage of Kai gathering by now, then he would be able to leave Ninghai easily. But now, he was only in the late phase of the 2nd stage. Seeing Yimo's silence, Yun Bing thought that Yimo heard her words and wanted to go check if his bag was in the car. However, she was suddenly grabbed by Yimo, so she looked at him in confusion. Yimo shook his head and said, Don't go. The reason Yimo didn't let Yun Bing go out was because, after his injuries, his spirit sense could surprisingly reach out to a distance of 12 to 15 meters. When his spirit sense scanned out, he found 2 people in casual clothing seemingly monitoring the people coming and going. Although he didn't know if this was related to him, Yimo still felt that it was better to be careful. Why? Obviously, Yunbing didn't know people were monitoring them and was curious why Yimo didn't seem to care about that bag all of a sudden. Yimo couldn't say he had a spirit sense, so he said, "It's not safe to go down to the parking to get things in the middle of the night. Besides, it's easy to be seen by people and become a target of suspicion." Yunbing thought about it a while and believed that Yimo's words were true, so she didn't insist. Yimo estimated that since even Yunbing was able to deduce that he had killed these people, the Song family would definitely be able to find out that Yimo was the murderer. It seemed that he should leave Ninghai as early as possible. After this thing, he could no longer go to Luo Kang. He sighed and thought, plans really couldn't keep up with changes. He still wanted to find a place to settle down and plant his silver heart grass before going to the desert. But now, he couldn't do that. "You should get some sleep," Yimo turned around and said to Yunbing. "Aren't you sleeping?" Yunbing thought that there was only one bed in the house. If she slept there, Yimo would have no place to sleep. Yimo shook his head. "I'm not tired. You can sleep first." He really wasn't, and at this time, he wasn't in the mood to sleep anyway. Since his plans were gone down the drain, he had to make new ones. Looking at Yimo, who didn't even have a shirt on, Yunbing hesitated for a while before saying, "There's still a few hours of nighttime, and the bed is really big, we can sleep on one side each." Yimo looked at Yunbing in surprise. He didn't expect Yunbing to say something like this. She didn't seem like an open person, but he didn't want Yunbing to think too much, so he nodded and said, "Fine, go to sleep, I'll just lean on the bed for a while." He thought that he could cultivate on the bed as well anyway, and a few hours would pass really in a flash for him. Right now, he hadn't fully recovered yet, so he shouldn't be careless. Yimo sat there and went into a cultivating state really quickly. However, Yunbing wasn't so stable when she slept, which didn't match her cold face at all. She just turned once and hugged one of Yimo's leg again. Although Yimo was cultivating, he could still feel Yunbing's body and the softness in front of her chest. Regardless of his past life or this life, he was a virgin in both as an ordinary man and as a cultivator. Although he was enticed, he cast the thoughts away hastily and didn't pay any more attention as he continued to cultivate. A few hours passed very quickly indeed. Yimo was still immersed in cultivation while Yunbing slept very well, the corner of her mouth slightly raised up, seemingly in a good dream. Perhaps after that incident, she had never been able to sleep so well. She felt as though she held something dependable and no longer had that feeling of hollowness from before, so she held very tightly with her hands without the slightest intention of letting go. After Yimo had cultivated a big Kai cycle, he opened his eyes and saw that the sky was not completely lit up yet. He looked at Yunbing, who shrunk her head into the blanket while her body was pressed on him completely, and Yimo felt that it was getting hotter. Although he wanted to remove Yunbing's hands, she seemed to stick onto him very tightly. Seeing her sleeping so sweetly, he sighed and didn't try to wake her again. He continued to cultivate to his next big cycle. He estimated that after he was done, Yunbing should be up too. When Yimo entered the next big Kai cycle again, Yunbing suddenly woke up, and as soon as she opened her eyes, she immediately found out that she was hugging Yimo's leg. She got scared and immediately let go. Although the sky wasn't fully lit, she just felt there was a hot burning sensation on her face. But immediately, she thought of Yimo. Did he really sit like this for the whole night? Seeing that Yimo still had his eyes closed as if he was still sleeping, Yunbing finally released a sigh of relief. Luckily Yimo was asleep, otherwise, that would have been too embarrassing. However, when she thought again to what she was feeling, she realized that she had this worry-free serenity when she had hugged Yimo's leg as she slept, which had made her very comfortable and didn't feel any worry or fear. Furthermore, the aroma from his body was also very pleasant, it even gave her a sense of otherworldliness. Yunbing looked at Yimo's sleeping young face and couldn't help but to touch her already 30-year-old face. Although it was still young and smooth, she still felt a bitterness in her heart and suddenly felt that perhaps it wasn't a good thing to go back to Beijing to see Feng Rong. There were some things she didn't dare to think about, but it didn't mean that they didn't exist. Was Feng Rong still the same as he used to be many years ago? She knew that she was no longer the Yunbing from all those years ago. She only wanted to see Feng Rong and ask him why he simply left without notice all those years ago, and why he never had contacted her before. But now, she felt this was unnecessary. So what if he remembered her? So what if he didn't? If something similar happened again, would he disappear again? Was this sort of man reliable? So what if he could take her to America? Perhaps she simply missed Ting Ting too much, but even if she went to Beijing, would she even be able to see Ting Ting? Yi Mo was still asleep. Yun Bing looked down at her curvaceous body. She thought about that day when Yi Mo saw her body and suddenly felt this burning sensation from the bottom of her heart. She started to shake and felt she was entranced, so she quickly left the bedroom and drank a cup of cold water. Finally, she was able to gradually calm down. When she went back to the bedroom again, she didn't dare to stay on the bed. She watched Yi Mo quietly before making an almost inaudible sigh after some time, as she never would have thought she would have sexual urges toward Yi Mo. However, she still had a logical mind and knew that Yi Mo and she were two people on different paths. Whether it was now or in the future, they would have no more encounters. Although Ning Zhongfei and Lan Yu persuaded Ning Qingxue again and again, she just wasn't willing to leave this house. They were helpless, so they could only let her be. Li Mumei stayed behind with Ning Qingxue for the moment, but they needed to return to Yu State. Mumei, how is it? Ning Qingxue still kept remembered Li Mumei saying that she would be able to invite out a few journalists. She wanted to know from the journalist how the case was progressing so she could know Yi Mo's current state. I've asked, and tonight, the police department of Ninghai City will hold a press conference, and one of Jingwen's friend will be there. We'll go together tomorrow to see that person, but Qingxue, I feel that this thing is actually beneficial to us, so there is no need to see the journalists, Li Mumei said. Of course, Ning Qingxue knew what she wanted to ask about, but she couldn't explain to Li Mumei, so she could only say, it might be related to me, let's go make sure. Li Mumei knew that it was someone from the Song family that had died. However, since it was Ning Qingxue's wish, she couldn't really stop her. Chapter 83, I Can't Let You Go. Chapter 83, I Can't Let You Go. Yi Mo cultivated another big cycle, and when he had finished, it was already noon. He felt that all the injuries in his body were gone and was full of vigor. Even his power increased a little. If he progressed a little more, he would reach the peak of the second stage. Although he wasn't there yet, he knew that such a minor improvement on such a desolate place, scarce of spirit Kai, was quite significant. He wasn't disappointed at all. He looked by his side. Yun Bing had gotten up and wasn't in the room. It seemed that she went out. Yi Mo got up and saw the toothbrush and toothpaste Yun Bing prepared for him and washed his face. Ding ding, the doorbell sounded. Yi Mo scanned with his spirit sense immediately and saw that the person standing at the door wasn't Yun Bing, but a 20-or-so-year-old girl. However, she didn't seem that much younger than Yun Bing. Although she wasn't as pretty as Yun Bing, her chest area was a bit more generous. In Yi Mo's impression, out of every girl he knew, the bustiest was Wen Dong. However, the chest of the girl in front of the door was even bigger than Wen Dong's. Seeing her look, if she hadn't been that young, Yi Mo would have thought this girl was already married. However, he didn't have much experience with women, so it would be normal if he was wrong. An unknown girl came to Yun Bing's home, and even if Yun Bing was at home, he would tell her not to open the door, so now that she wasn't here, there was no reason for him to open it. After all, he was on the run right now. The girl waited for a while and saw that nobody answered the door, so she said to herself, Sister Bing isn't at school and isn't at home either, where could she be? Afterward, Yi Mo saw her leaving and finally felt relieved, as he didn't want this woman to come in. However, he soon realized how unlucky he was because, at this moment, Yun Bing was coming back, carrying a lot of things including a bag, but it wasn't his. Sister Bing, where did you go? I looked everywhere, from the school to here, and I finally found you. This girl immediately screamed in joy when she saw Yun Bing. He Li, why did you come? When did you come to Ninghai? Yun Bing replied immediately, but soon, He Li saw Yun Bing's anxious face and seemed to have understood her situation. Obviously, it's because I have something to talk to you about. Hurry and open the door. I'll tell you inside, He Li said immediately. Yun Bing hesitated at the door but didn't open. What, Sister Bing, you're not gonna make me tell you here, are you? I came from so far away, and you're not even going to let me in and sit for a while. It's not like you have a man hiding inside. Why are you afraid of opening the door? He Li saw Yun Bing still wouldn't take out the keys and immediately joked. Yun Bing's face blushed and stuttered, He Li, why don't we talk outside? I have someone at home. Huh, Sister Bing, you have a boyfriend? Then I must go inside to meet him. I must see what sort of person can conquer your distant heart. He Li immediately shouted in surprise. Yun Bing hesitated for a while. She wasn't someone who didn't know what was at stake. Although He Li was a good friend of hers, Yimo's identity was too special. Thinking about this, she bit her teeth and said, He Li, how about I present you to him next time? He is still naked at home. He Li looked at Yun Bing for a long while as though she discovered an alien before saying, Sister Bing, I really didn't know you were so open. You're even sleeping together. Who is this guy? No, make him dress up, I must meet him. But his clothes were ripped last night. Yun Bing couldn't find a better excuse in the spur of the moment. He Li opened her eyes wider again and examined Yun Bing from head to toe before sighing. Sister Bing, you really are strong. How long does it take off the clothes? You guys can't even wait for that scene. Oh my god. Yun Bing's face was blushing red, but she couldn't explain it. Okay, seeing how you're so embarrassed, I won't go inside and disturb your romance. I just came here to tell you that Feng Rong came back. He was asking for your news everywhere, but I don't think this Feng Rong is trustworthy. Be careful of him. I'm here to participate in the press conference, so I won't chat with you now. Next time, remember to bring your boyfriend and show me. He Li turned and left after talking. Yun Bing looked at He Li's disappearing back before she was relieved and let out a sigh. She finally managed to trick her to go away. Unfortunately, the cost was to expose her non-existent wildness and promiscuity. Yun Bing opened the door and saw Yimo, who stood at the doorway. She was so scared that she immediately closed the doors and said worriedly, You're not well yet, why did you get up? Yimo said with gratitude, Mrs. Yun, thank you for what you did just then. You heard it all? Yun Bing thought about the fact that Yimo was standing behind the door as soon as she had asked the question, so he must have heard it. However, she also remembered her words and her face started to change. She wondered what Yimo would think of her. Yeah, I heard it all, that was really hard for you, so if there's the opportunity in the future, I will definitely come back and repay your goodwill. However, I have already troubled you for 2 days, Yimo said with guilt. He was someone who would respect those who respected him more and split his debt and enmity very clearly. He paid animosity with animosity and goodwill with goodwill. I didn't really help you, and from now on, don't call me Mrs. Yun. I feel it's a bit awkward. Yun Bing remembered the time when she slept beside Yimo. They had slept together, despite not doing anything. Yun Bing still felt calling her that was a bit weird. However, Yun Bing suddenly realized the implication of his words and said in shock, What did your words just then meant? Are you leaving? Yimo nodded and said, Yes, I have already bothered you for many days. You saved me, and I can't stay at your place any longer, that would be endangering you. I have recovered now, and I need to leave. By the way, did you help me look for my bag? No, I can't let you go, Yun Bing just said half her sentence when she saw the shock on Yimo's face. She immediately blushed and changed her tone. I meant that it's too dangerous outside, they are searching for you everywhere, if you go out now, it would be suicide. Yimo felt warm in his heart. Yun Bing was the typical cold-faced, yet warm-hearted woman. He had just helped her once, and she repaid him with this much. She even neglected her reputation for him. Sister Bing, I know that you're saying this for my sake, but in fact, I have the means to escape, you can rest assured. Yimo felt the need to change the way he called her from Mrs. Yun to Sister Bing. Seeing Yimo change his words, Yun Bing's face eased down. She stayed silent for a moment before saying, Yimo, stay for another night. In fact, when you sleep at my house, my sleep is also a lot better. It was like that last night, so just think of it as helping me, can you? Yimo looked at Yun Bing in disbelief. With her ruddy face, she actually looked stunningly enticing and beautiful. He knew that Yun Bing was afraid that he would be caught immediately after he left. Seeing Yimo look at her for so long without talking, the ruddiness on her face retreated and turned white. Just when she wanted to say something, Yimo spoke, Fine, Sister Bing, I think you're right. I'll leave tomorrow morning then. Perhaps that's when it would be the safest. Seeing Yi Mo agree to her, Yun Bing's face was beaming with joy. She acted like a little child trying to please an adult and brought out the bag in her hands. All your things are in here. I also bought a lot of food, and I'll cook for you in a moment so that you can fill your stomach. Chapter 84. The Prince Charming that Descended from the Heaven. Chapter 84. The Prince Charming that Descended from the Heaven. Ning Qingxue didn't like Starbucks and never went there to drink coffee. She disliked the so-called North American style and even didn't like the cake inside. However, today she had to go to Starbucks because the journalist friend of Su Jingwen loved their coffee. Mumei, Qingxue, this way. As soon as Ning Qingxue and Li Mumei came, Su Jingwen called out from a table near the window. Beside her sat a tall-figured woman. She was good-looking too. Let me introduce. This is my friend Xiao Lei. She is the most famous journalist in Beijing. She always charges to the front line and gets every first-hand news. Xiao Lei, they are my friends Mumei and Qingxue, Su Jingwen introduced for both sides. Hello, Qingxue, Mumei. I've heard of the big name Ning Qingxue, the prettiest girl in Beijing. When I saw you today, I feel so self-conscious, haha. Xiao Lei also stood up and shook their hands. Big journalist Xiao, I've heard of you. Last time I was on your blog looking at your posts from when you went to Flowing Snake. I didn't think I would meet you in Ninghai so fast. It's a real honor. Li Mumei was better at communicating and became familiar with Xiao Lei very quickly. Xiao Lei smiled and said, if it wasn't for someone who saved me last time, perhaps I wouldn't even be able to come back. Then, Xiao Lei looked at Ning Qingxue. Of course, she knew that Ning Qingxue had a fiancé called Yi Mo, and the person who saved her was also called Yi Mo. But, she wouldn't think these two would be the same person. The difference was too huge. Perhaps everyone in Beijing knew what sort of a fiancé Ning Qingxue had. How could he be that Yi Mo in Flowing Snake? What do you want to drink? Su Jingwen was the host today. Li Mumei didn't really care and casually ordered a mocha. I don't mind. Ning Qingxue didn't like coffee anyway. The main reason she came today was to find out about Yi Mo. As for drinks, she didn't care at all. The four girls who sat on Su Jingwen's table were all gorgeous. Soon, they attracted the eyes of everyone in the cafeteria, which made Ning Qingxue uncomfortable. Xiao Lei, I've also heard about you. I really admire your journalism spirit. Although Ning Qingxue hadn't been to Beijing, she had still heard about the famous journalist Xiao Lei. Although Li Mumei didn't know why Ning Qingxue cared so much about the case last night, it should be related to the Song family. So she asked for Ning Qingxue. Xiao Lei, I heard Jingwen say that you came to Ninghai to interview in that case. How is that going? Li Mumei seemed to ask casually, so Xiao Lei didn't care too much. She just thought they found a topic she was familiar to talk about. She took a sip of the coffee and said, they still haven't captured the fugitive yet, but it's said that the family of the victim already know who the culprit is. They just don't have solid evidence yet since this culprit was very cunning. Before he went in, he destroyed all the surveillance apparatus. Ning Qingxue felt her heart feeling relieved after hearing that the culprit wasn't caught. For the first time, she drank coffee. There was a faint taste of milk, and the texture was silky smooth. Suddenly, Ning Qingxue felt that this coffee wasn't bad. It had a lot less bitter flavor than what she had tasted previously. Song Xiaotan was killed, so this time, the Song family will go crazy. The Song family is indeed too cocky, so it's not a surprise that people have made a move on them. It seems that one can't be too arrogant. Li Mumei didn't have the slightest sympathy for the death of Song Xiaotan and didn't hide the meaning of her words. However, Xiao Lei shook her head. The craziest issue this time isn't about the Song family. Although they are still crazy, they have a lot of descendants. This time, a crazier one is related to another one of the people murdered. He's called Qian Shiping. Qian Shiping. Both Ning Qingxue and Li Mumei hadn't heard of this name before and were a bit surprised. Who could get crazier than the Song family? Who is Qian Shiping? Although Su Jingwen was curious, she didn't have to ask, but Ning Qingxue had to because it concerned Yi Mo's safety. As if confused at Ning Qingxue's desperation, Su Jingwen glanced at Ning Qingxue. In her eyes, Ning Qingxue shouldn't have so much curiosity toward these things, unlike ordinary people. But now, she was more curious than her. This was indeed strange. Although Xiao Lei had heard of Ning Qingxue, she didn't really know her personality, so she explained, the name Qian Shiping isn't much, but the main point is, his dad is called Qian by her, but he has another name, Qian Longtu. Qian Longtu? Ning Qingxue felt this name was familiar but couldn't remember who it was. Qian Longtu is the underground leader of one of the gang in Northeast Asia, Nanqing. His influence is so huge that it is said he would have the means to find even a needle dropped in the ocean. But now, his only son was killed. Do you think he would stop with his power? So this thing is quite serious, we just don't know Qian Longtu's reaction yet. Before Xiao Lei finished speaking, the coffee cup that Ning Qingxue just raised suddenly splattered on the table, spilling coffee everywhere. Although she didn't understand what Nanqing represented exactly, it didn't mean she didn't know what Nanqing was. She just didn't expect Yi Mo to get into conflict with someone so powerful. Immediately, she felt unrest. Qingxue, what's wrong? Li Mumei asked concerningly. She thought Ning Qingxue's wounds hadn't healed yet. Su Jingwen also noticed that there was something wrong with Ning Qingxue. Her face didn't seem as normal as before and quickly changed the topic. Let's not talk about this, it's too depressing. Xiao Lei, tell us about your experience last time at Flowing Snake. I also want to go there for my holiday. Xiao Lei, who initially had her eyes on Ning Qingxue, was immediately attracted by the topic. Hearing Su Jingwen's words, she hurriedly waved her hand. Jingwen, you must not go to Flowing Snake. If I wasn't saved by Yi Mo last time, I wouldn't be alive now. Yi Mo, Li Mumei, Ning Qingxue, and Su Jingwen almost said this name at the same time. After Xiao Lei had spoken, she knew that she said it wrong and quickly corrected her meaning. It's Yi Mo but not Qingxue's. Sorry, I didn't realize that the person who saved me was also called Yi Mo. Ning Qingxue returned to herself and smiled. It doesn't matter, I don't mind. Xiao Lei, can you tell me about it? Seeing Ning Qingxue calmed down instead, she started retelling her encounters in Flowing Snake. To be honest, I really didn't think that Wang Qianjun was that sort of person. He paid 50 grand and just dumped me there while he ran for himself. He actually gave me to a bunch of bandits. I didn't see this on your blog, then what did you do after? Li Mumei also started to worry here. Xiao Lei's eyes suddenly became obsessed as she mumbled, at that time, he was like a prince charming that descended from the heavens and knocked all the bandits out. The way he flew was too handsome. His kicks. I can never forget in my entire life. I have never seen someone with such high martial arts skills. I thought this was all TV action scenes, but it happened to me that day. Hearing Xiao Lei's recount, even Su Jingwen and Li Mumei felt an anxiety and longing towards that scene. However, Ning Qingxue felt more and more that the person was the Yi Mo she longed for. Chapter 85, Alright, we'll both sleep on the bed then. Chapter 85, Alright, we'll both sleep on the bed then. Xiao Lei, since you're so pretty, did he want to keep contact with you? Li Mumei immediately was interested. Xiao Lei shook her head and said bitterly, to be honest, I was interested in him at that moment. I'm sure that was love at first sight. However, I'm not his Snow White. He didn't give me any chance at all, he didn't even give me his number. Su Jingwen couldn't contain herself and laughed out loud. Journalist Xiao, she has the perfect body and the perfect face. Look at this chest of hers, even I'm scared. How can you be afraid that you can't find your prince? Seeing Su Jingwen make jokes about her, Xiao Lei surprisingly didn't laugh. Instead, she shook her head again and said, you don't understand my feeling at the time. At my most helpless moment, someone came down from the heavens and saved me. I didn't read too much fairy tales, this is real. Perhaps you guys haven't experienced it and can't understand my feeling. But, he's so handsome, perhaps that's not called handsome, but I don't know what it's called. Xiao Lei actually felt dejected. Xiao Lei, can you describe what he looks like to us? Ning Qingxue suddenly asked shakily. They were all thinking to themselves and didn't notice Ning Qingxue's weird tone. He looked around 20 years old wearing an ordinary light blue shirt. His skin looked very good, and he had a gentle appearance. His eyes were very soft and looked very comfortable. He appeared to be almost 180 centimeters and doesn't look extraordinarily handsome, but his face was clearly distinguished and very pleasant to look at. When he smiled, he looked very confident, as if he wouldn't care even if the heavens were collapsing. His nose was very sharp, his teeth very white. By the way, I have his photo, hurry up and take it out, Li Mumei said. They still didn't get a clear image after Xiao Lei described for so long. The only real notion they could imagine would be his height. Xiao Lei took out an exquisite mirror from her bag and passed the mirror while mocking herself. The photo is here, but I took it secretly last time. I'm already in an unrequited love now. But even if she didn't say it, they could tell from Xiao Lei's tone and this exquisite mirror that she really had those feelings. Otherwise, why would a mirror holding a photo be so exquisite? Ning Qingxue took over the mirror shakily, and suddenly as she saw the picture, she dropped the mirror. Luckily, it was caught by Su Jingwen beside her. Seeing Ning Qingxue make the same mistake twice, Li Mumei said worriedly, "Qingxue, are you really all right? How about we leave earlier?" Ning Qingxue only nodded and still didn't talk, but Su Jingwen shouted in surprise, "It really is Yi Mo. He is called Yi Mo." Xiao Lei only spoke half a sentence before realizing something wasn't right. She looked at Su Jingwen in surprise. "What did you mean by it really is Yi Mo?" Li Mumei took over the mirror and also said in surprise, "Qingxue, it really is him. Why did he go to Flowing Snake?" Xiao Lei felt something was wrong and looking inquisitively towards Su Jingwen. Su Jingwen smiled bitterly and said, "He is Qingxue's current husband. Yi Mo, I just don't know why he would go to Flowing Snake." "Qingxue's husband?" Xiao Lei repeated. A sudden unknown feeling welled up, making her face feel hot. But then, she said immediately, "Didn't Qingxue already break the marriage agreement?" Su Jingwen looked at Xiao Lei and said, "Xiao Lei, it's not surprising that you don't know. Although her family had broken the marriage agreement, Qingxue still married him in the end, but the wedding was just very discreet. At that time, you were probably in Tibet, and you probably went to Flowing Snake as soon as you came back, so you probably didn't hear about this. Now, Qingxue is still married to Yi Mo, they didn't divorce." The reason Su Jingwen said this was to point out that Yi Mo was still Ning Qingxue's husband right now and make Xiao Lei be more careful with her words. However, she was also being euphemistic. How was Qingxue and Yi Mo's wedding discreet? It was almost as though they didn't have one. They just went to collect a marriage certificate. Xiao Lei looked at Ning Qingxue awkwardly. She didn't expect the man she secretly admired and kept a photo of to be the husband of the girl sitting in front of her right now. Sorry, Qingxue, I really didn't know that Yi Mo was your husband. It was because I heard that Xiao Lei felt very awkward. At the same time, she felt a deep sense of disappointment and unfairness. She didn't understand why the Yi Mo she had met would be Ning Qingxue's husband. If that Yi Mo was really the useless person the Yi family kicked out, how could he be so strong and so calm? Even if he was that disabled Yi Mo, how can someone like Ning Qingxue marry him? Yun Bing cooked a table full of dishes. Yi Mo hadn't eaten a good meal for a long time, so she was afraid that it would affect his body, hence she went out today and bought a lot of vegetables. As if having an extra person made the house a lot more lively, Yun Bing also felt much happier. If she hadn't been worrying about what Yi Mo had done, perhaps she would be even happier. At this moment, she felt that she wasn't Merciless Bing. She didn't want to be Merciless Bing. Perhaps it was because no one was able to make her truly feel happy all these years. Actually, Yi Mo didn't really do anything, but he rendered her a feeling of reliability. Perhaps it was because she didn't have a man in her life for a long time. Although she knew that her thinking was wrong, she couldn't stop her subconscious thinking. She had hoped more than once that Yi Mo hadn't done those things. He was an abandoned son, his fiancée also broke the marriage pact with him. Moreover, his body had that unspeakable problem. However, Yun Bing secretly thought that she didn't mind these things and liked the feeling of sleeping next to Yi Mo. It was very comfortable and relaxing. But she knew that she could only think about it for a few moments and didn't even dare to say it or even consider it properly. She was already an impure woman and much older than him. Besides, there were the eyes of the society judging her. Sigh, Yun Bing wondered once again if only Yi Mo wasn't on the wanted list yet. Perhaps only she knew of his excellence. After dinner, Yimo wanted to sleep early. This was because he needed to run at night and needed to save up enough stamina. He was very grateful toward Yunbing for bringing back everything. The silver heart grass and the purple heart vine were all very precious to him and weren't something he could find easily. You sleep on the bed tonight, and I'll sleep on the couch. Although Yunbing liked the feeling of sleeping beside Yimo, she was also afraid she would wake up hugging Yimo once more. She didn't dare to sleep on the bed at night. Yimo shook his head. I'm the man, I sleep the couch, you sleep on the bed. No, your body hasn't recovered yet, how can you sleep on the couch? Yunbing immediately rejected his proposal. All right, we'll both sleep on the bed then, wasn't it like that last night as well? Yimo didn't even care if he slept with Yunbing. He only felt grateful towards Yunbing, nothing else. Okay, Yunbing didn't even try to object slightly. Chapter 86, Leaving Ninghai. Chapter 86, Leaving Ninghai. When Yimo had woken up, it was already 1 a.m. This time was perfect for him to leave Ninghai. He looked at Yunbing. He didn't know when she came into his arms again. She still had a small smile on the corner of her lips, her face was also slightly red. He didn't know what sort of good dream she was having. Although in Yimo's impression before, Yunbing was a cold and heartless woman, after Yimo had lived with her for a couple of days, her impression of her had some change, and even though she was almost 30, Yimo felt she wasn't even as mature as Xu Wei. She completely used her cold face to conceal her true nature. In the depth of her heart, she was still like an unmarried young girl who yearned for warmth and protection. This could be seen from how she would go into his arms every time she slept. Yunbing didn't wear her clothes and slept like last night, with only a nightgown. However, she held Yimo's arms which pressed onto the two balls in front her chest, revealing half a globe of shocking whiteness. He could even see the red bean-like dot since she didn't even wear bras. Although Yimo hadn't had the adult experience yet, it didn't mean he didn't understand it. He just felt his mouth was getting drier the more he looked at her. Yimo could hardly connect the woman sleeping beside him with that cold teacher since one was so understanding, while the other was so cold. Yimo sighed. Perhaps this was her way of protecting herself. He carefully removed Yunbing's hand and covered her with the blanket. Then, Yimo got off the bed. He thought a while, then took out a pen and some paper and left her a simple letter. Afterward, he put on his clothes and his bag before jumping out straight from the balcony. Although Yunbing was living on the 4th floor, Yimo could jump to the balcony on the 2nd story first before jumping from there. Soon, he disappeared into the dark night. Although there were barricades everywhere in Ninghai, it wasn't much trouble for Yimo as he didn't need to ride a vehicle. His cloud shadow step wouldn't be slower than cars, and on the contrary, he was even agiler. After 2 hours, it was already 3 a.m. now. Yimo had left Ninghai far behind. Yimo thought again and again and was certain his identity had been exposed, but now, he didn't have any way of forging a new identity. He could use the one Wen Dong helped make for him, but the name on there was also Yimo, which definitely would attract too much attention. Sigh, if only he had changed his name before. Yimo stood at a 3-way intersection as he wanted to stop a vehicle. No matter where he went, it was best to get as far as possible. He wouldn't be able to handle it if he kept using his cloud shadow step. However, the cars coming and going on the road weren't much. Only a few cargo trucks passed occasionally. Although Yimo tried to get them to stop for a long time, none of them did. A car that didn't have a clearly visible brand drove toward Yimo quite fast. Yimo waved his hand trying his luck, and if this car still wouldn't stop, he decided to find a cargo truck and get on secretly. What surprised Yimo was that this car actually stopped. Just when Yimo was prepared to go up and thank them, he heard a female voice in the car say, "Xueming, why would you stop the car for a stranger in the middle of the night? Besides, we're already being pursued ourselves, what if he's also someone from Yellow Dandan, who doesn't encounter troubles outside? We also have this car because someone else helped us. Besides, we only came here for half a day after getting this car, Yellow couldn't possibly know, so how can he be one of them? Plus, he's by himself, do you not trust your man?" This time it was a man's voice. He appeared to be already 30 or so, and at this moment, Yimo had already walked up to the car. The man looked at him and said, "Come on in, friend, open the door." The woman rolled her eyes and didn't say anything anymore. Although the man and woman only spoke a few sentences, he already made out the approximate situation. These two also got into conflict with someone and were on the run, just like him, but fortunately, this man was warm-hearted. They were amidst trouble themselves, but he was still willing to help others. Immediately, Yi Mo had a good impression of him. "I'm Wu Xueming, this is my girlfriend, Yu Miaodan. Where do you want to go, friend?" Wu Xueming immediately introduced as Yi Mo got on the car. Yi Mo saluted with his fists and said, "I'm Yi Mo, I don't have a specific place I want to go. I just want to take a ride for a while." He was grateful toward Wu Xueming and didn't hide his name. Originally, that woman saw Yi Mo seemed quiet and weak, so she felt safe, but hearing his words now, she immediately became vigilant. A person stopped their car but didn't have a clear idea of where he wanted to go to. This didn't sound right at all. Hearing Yi Mo's words, Wu Xueming studied Yi Mo in surprise. No matter how he looked, Yi Mo didn't seem like someone who could threaten him. Yi Mo could tell that these two people were suspicious of him. He didn't intend to hide, besides they were also on the run, so he smiled bitterly and said, "It's because I offended someone rather significant, so I ran out during the night. I just want to get as far away as possible. As long as you take me to a distant place and drop me off before dawn, I would be very grateful." Hearing Yi Mo's words, Wu Xueming understood immediately. The power of the world was always grasped in the hands of the minority. Some insignificant people who offend the significant people had no other way but to run. Although they were also on the run, he had some sympathy for Yi Mo. He only nodded and spoke no more. He just started the car and left rapidly. Yi Mo sat on the back seat. He could feel that Wu Xueming practiced martial arts, but compared to him, Wu Xueming could only be called average. Perhaps a little better than Fang Wei Cheng, but better to a limit. However, he had no idea what the yellow was. This woman did seem to be pleasing to the eye. A fitting dress covered her body, showcasing all of her curves, and she had some light makeup on her face, making her seem exquisite but not vulgar. At this moment, she was on the seat beside the driver. However, her eyes were constantly on Wu Xueming, and obviously, he was very important to her. Wu Xueming, with his thick eyebrows, looked very bulky and had the allure of a soldier. At least, Yi Mo was sure that he was a soldier, or had been before, because he could feel a kind of aura similar to that of the soldier he had saved in the forest, Guo Qi. However, he also had a fierce killer's qi on him, which was something Guo Qi didn't have. It meant that after he had left the army, he wasn't only doing the ordinary occupation. Who did Brother Yi offend? Wu Xueming felt the atmosphere in the car was tense and asked. "Someone with quite the status. Unfortunately, I offended this person, and I have no choice but to run. Luckily I met Brother Wu." Although Yi Mo had a good impression of Wu Xueming, they still just met each other. He didn't need to tell him everything. Sigh. This society. Wu Xueming sighed and didn't continue talking. After a while, he spoke again. "I'm going to Mangjiang so I can drop you off there. What do you think?" Mangjiang is close to the sea and Hong Kong. You can find your way to Hong Kong or other places easily from there. Yi Mo nodded and said, "Okay, Mangjiang is fine. Thank you, Brother Wu." Wu Xueming smiled. "Troubles are unavoidable when you're outside. I can only help you with this. You have to depend on yourself for the rest." Chapter 87. Being followed. Chapter 87. Being followed. Ring ring. It was Yu Miaodan's phone. She picked it up, but no one spoke. Just when she was confused, Wu Xueming's face suddenly changed. He immediately said, "Quick. Turn it off. Quick." Yu Miaodan closed her phone confusingly and looked at Wu Xueming. "What's wrong, Xueming? We were probably geolocated by these people. I think it would take no longer than 2 minutes before they find out where we are." Wu Xueming's face looked bad. Then what do we do?" "But I just switched to a new number, and nobody knew." "How did they know?" Yu Miaodan had a face full of worry and was pale. Yi Mo could tell from Yu Miaodan's face that the people they offended were very powerful, otherwise, they wouldn't be this scared. "Before you got your new number, you called Dai Shan. It was probably revealed from her." Wu Xueming's face didn't look good, but he had calmed down already. How is that possible? Dai Shan is like my sister. Why would she do something like that? Yu Miaodan's face was full of disbelief. There's nothing that's impossible in this world. Although Dai Shan is very close to you, who could resist their temptation in front of death or benefits? This isn't the time to think about it now. We need to think about what we should do next. Wu Xueming was completely calm now. Yi Mo saw that Wu Xueming was quite collected and thought of him more highly. When things happened, one need to face it, not complain. Brother Yi, I'm really sorry, you need to get off here. Truth be told, we're also running away. However, the people I offended are much more powerful than the people you offended. Right now, we have been tracked by them, and they'll probably find us soon. If you stay in the car, you'll be affected too. Wu Xueming had an apologetic face, but he glanced once at Yu Miaodan showing concern. Yu Miaodan had also calmed down. She had already seen Wu Xueming's worry, but she laughed it off. Xueming, what's there to worry about? Can they stop us from dying together? However, Wu Xueming didn't feel relieved from Yu Miaodan's words. Instead, he said glumly, sorry, Miaodan, I'm a man, but I can't even protect my own woman. After speaking, Wu Xueming had stopped the car, and Yi Mo knew what he had meant by that. He wanted him to get off the car. For Yi Mo, it was the best for him to get off here. He already had enough troubles and didn't expect that a random ride he took would have as much trouble as he had. However, if he got off here, his heart wouldn't be able to rest. He wasn't some heartless person. When he needed help, he waved his hand, and they helped him, so now when the same people who helped him were in trouble, he couldn't just pat his butt and leave. Regardless, Yi Mo felt this was unacceptable. Seeing Yi Mo frowned but still not get off the car, Wu Xueming quickly told him, Brother Yi, hurry up and get off the car, the power I offended is too great. Perhaps it won't be long before they catch up to us, they might even stop us ahead. Yi Mo smiled and said, although I don't know what sort of person Brother Wu offended, I really want to stay and help you. After all, you helped me before, if I don't help you, that can't be acceptable no matter what. I think that with one extra person, it's one more share of power. I hope Brother Wu won't mind. Wu Xueming looked at Yi Mo and sighed, I finally understand now why you would offend the local authorities there. With your personality, it would be a miracle if you didn't offend them. But, I really admire your character, and it's a pity that I can't share a drink with you. Brother Yi, the people I offended aren't ordinary people, and they definitely can't compare with a small local authority you offended. You don't understand the complications, and I won't bother to explain, quickly get off the car. Seeing Wu Xueming insist, Yi Mo had no choice and said, in that case, Brother Wu, which is the next city? Jemu Town, it's a small town. Although it's only 20 minutes drive, it takes slightly longer by foot. Wu Xueming thought Yi Mo wanted to walk to the small town and rest. Thus, he introduced it quickly. Okay, then you can just drop me off there. At the small town, I'll be able to find my own ride. You won't reject helping me out with this, would you? Yi Mo smiled faintly. Sigh, 20 minutes is enough for them to find us. In that case, I'll help you one more time. We'll take the small road, perhaps we really might be able to escape. Afterward, Wu Xueming turned the car and soon drove onto a small road, and even though the size of the path was limited, Wu Xueming was driving even faster. It had been 20 minutes since Yu Miaodan's phone call, and in the distance ahead, the road lights of the small town could be seen. However, a clear whirring sound could be heard from the distance. Wu Xueming suddenly stopped the car but didn't say anything, and his face gradually became uglier. Yi Mo nodded as he recognized that it wasn't surprising that Wu Xueming was scared. He had his reason to. These people's power weren't just strong, it was overpowering. They could even find a helicopter. That whirring sound was obviously the noise made by the chopper moving toward their vehicle. Sorry Brother Yi, I got you caught into this, and you won't be able to leave anymore even if you wanted to. Since they have already found us, they won't let you escape even if you leave alone. After apologizing, Wu Xueming didn't pay any more attention to Yi Mo. Instead, he grabbed Yu Miaodan's hand and no longer hid the worry and pain in his eyes. Xueming, it's okay, it's fine as long as we can be together. They can stop us from living together, but can they stop us from dying together? At this moment, Yu Miaodan didn't seem worried at all. Even if I die, I will drag two with me, Wu Xueming suddenly said cruelly. At the same time, he took out a pistol from the car and passed a knife to Yi Mo. Use this to protect yourself. Sigh. Yi Mo smiled and waved his hand. No need, I have things to protect myself with. Originally, Wu Xueming felt guilty for dragging Yi Mo into this, but now, he looked at him differently. The enemy had mobilized a helicopter, and there was no way Yi Mo hadn't realized how strong the enemy was by now, yet he was still very calm. It meant that he wasn't an ordinary man. Thinking about this, Wu Xueming said, Brother Yi, have you ever heard of Metal River? Yi Mo shook his head, he had really never heard of them. Wu Xueming continued, it's not a surprise that you haven't heard of them because you aren't a part of that world. Metal River is the only gang that isn't controlled by Nanqing in the mainland. Although they aren't as big as Nanqing, Metal River is able to be independent of Nanqing, and it could even be said that they are the biggest gang in the mainland of China because Nanqing's power range is no longer limited to the mainland but also overseas. Metal River is so strong because of the boss of Metal River. He is called Metal Mountain and has a title, Metal Chain stretching across the river, and the name Metal River also came from his title. The person I offended should be ranked in the top 3 inside Metal River, and his name is Huang. You can tell how powerful he is by him being able to send out a helicopter overtly. In the entire Metal River, other than the gang leader, and the second gang leader who never shows his face, Huang is the strongest. Although Huang might not be the actual third in power, the gang leader rarely concerns himself with the business in the gang. Most of the things are managed by Huang himself, so he has a lot of power. Although Wu Xueming didn't continue talking, Yi Mo had already understood the gist of it. Offending Huang meant offending an incredibly powerful boss of a gang. No wonder, he didn't have much fighting will. In this situation, he would at most be able to drag a few with him to his death. Chapter 88. Perhaps they came to give us the helicopter. Chapter 88. Perhaps they came to give us the helicopter actually, the thing is. I'm also from Metal River. Brother Metal Mountain is very kind to me and also has high hopes for me. He even wanted me to take Huang's position. Besides, Huang is also interested in Miaodan, but since she had followed me instead, Huang already wanted to kill me. However, if I was really killed by Huang, Brother Metal Mountain definitely wouldn't blame him since if you want to live the gang life, you will need to have the resolve to live this dangerously. Now that I think of it, I suspect that Brother Metal Mountain intentionally said that in front of everyone while he was drunk to test me and see if I could survive Huang's scheme. If I died, it would have meant that I didn't fulfill the prerequisite to that position, and I wouldn't blame him for this. Since I was the one to chose this path, I should have the resolve of living like this. Wu Xueming seemed to try to ease Yu Miaodan's worry and tried to explain the situation to Yi Mo as to find something to talk about. However, he had his eyes set on the helicopter that descended in the open ground not far away. Yi Mo sighed as he really couldn't understand what Wu Xueming was thinking. He was actually willing to be used as a pawn. If it had been him, he definitely wouldn't be willing to be manipulated by that Metal Mountain, even if it meant that he would take over Huang's position if he won. In Yi Mo's eyes, Wu Xueming's character wasn't suitable for gangs and mafias. Brother Yi, I beg of you. Later, I will hold them there and not let this helicopter fly while you take Miaodan away. I don't want Miaodan to be in the hands of that Huang animal. Wu Xueming implored Yi Mo. Hearing Wu Xueming's words, Yu Miaodan suddenly grabbed his hand and retorqued, No, Xueming, even if it's in death, I won't leave you this time. Yi Mo also shook his head and said, Brother Wu, it might not even be possible anyway. Look, the moonlight was beautiful, and they could see clearly that 5 people had descended from the helicopter. One man had an assault rifle while the others 4 had submachine guns. Not only so, but they all had bulletproof helmets. Seeing this, Wu Xueming's eyes also dimmed. He knew that he wouldn't be able to get away no matter what. However, Yi Mo didn't mind the guns in these people's hands. There were only 5 people, he wasn't worried at all. What he cared about was that helicopter. He thought that if he had a helicopter, he would be able to go far away immediately. He turned and looked at Wu Xueming, whose face changed rapidly. Brother Wu, don't worry. We'll see once they come over, Perhaps they came to give us the helicopter. Although he didn't understand why Yi Mo would be joking in this situation, Wu Xueming still nodded. He only had 4 bullets in his pistol anyway, and if he needed to save 2 for suicide, he only had 2 bullets for 5 men, but these 2 probably wouldn't be much use anyways. As they spoke, the 5 had rapidly charged in front of them and surrounded the car. Yi Mo slowly opened the car and got off first. However, he kept his spirit sense on the 5 people. If someone tried to move his finger to pull the trigger, he would kill him immediately. The reason he hadn't killed them by now was only because he couldn't pilot the helicopter, so he needed to keep the pilot alive. Seeing Yi Mo get off the car, Wu Xueming sighed as he also pulled Yu Miaodan's hand and got off the car. "Brother White Shark, there's an extra person, what do we do?" They apparently hadn't expected an additional person and were puzzled. "Take away Wu and Yu and take care of the extra person," the leading man said. At this moment, Yi Mo opened his mouth. "Don't talk about killing this quickly. First, which one of you here is a helicopter pilot?" Hearing Yi Mo's words, the leading man, White Shark, stopped the man who was about to fire. "I am. Why did you ask?" "Oh, I want to save that person's life." As Yi Mo finished his words, a few gusts of wind brushed past the 4-man's eyes as 4 nails accurately pierced their throat. These common thugs weren't a threat at all to him, even with guns in their hands. After a few sounds, the 4 gunmen wanted to cover their throats but realized that they didn't even have the strength to raise their hands. In the blink of an eye, the 4 collapsed, lifeless. White Shark looked at this shocking scene and, before he even came to his sense, the AK-47 in his hand was grabbed by the young man who had just spoken. At this moment, Wu Xueming finally reacted as he looked at Yi Mo in shock. He didn't think that someone who stopped him on the road would be so terrifying. Immediately, light shone out of Wu Xueming's eyes as he realized that Yi Mo was a master, definitely one of the legendary master. "Who are you? How dare you interfere with the business of Metal River?" Speaking to there, he suddenly realized that the youth in front of him not only interfered with the matter of Metal River, but he had also killed the people of Metal River. At this moment, Yu Miaodan also realized how strong Yi Mo was, and was in no less surprise than Wu Xueming. Yi Mo turned around and said to Wu Xueming, who was still in shock, "Brother Wu, you guys go into the helicopter first, I'll clean up here." Wu Xueming also knew now wasn't the time to ask questions, so he quickly held Yu Miaodan and went toward the helicopter. The shock in his heart still hadn't calmed down. Seeing Wu Xueming and his woman go toward the helicopter, Yi Mo looked at White Shark and said, "Dump these few people in the car and set it on fire. I will count to 10, if you still haven't done it by then, you will join them in the car." This time, White Shark reacted quickly to Yi Mo's words. He had already completely understood what sort of person he was facing, someone who could kill without blinking more easily than them. Anyway, this wasn't the first time he had burned a car, thus, he immediately dragged the 4 bodies with his quickest speed into the car and ripped off a piece of fabric that he imbued with gasoline before setting the car on fire. "Pick up the guns on the ground and get on the chopper," Yi Mo said coldly. Hearing that Yi Mo wanted him to grab the guns, White Shark immediately rejoiced in his heart. This man actually allowed him to pick up the gun. "Do you believe that before you could pull the trigger, I can kill you 100 times? Yi Mo seemed to know what White Shark was thinking, and his words froze White Shark in his tracks. In the end, he picked up the guns and didn't dare to play any tricks. Just as Yi Mo and White Shark came to the helicopter, the car exploded, making a lot of noises. Fortunately, this place was still quite far from the town, and although the sound of the explosion was loud, no one came. Inside the helicopter, Wu Xueming and Yu Miaodan had already sat down, and the two were looking at Yi Mo differently now. However, what shocked Yi Mo was that Wu Xueming was seated in the pilot's cockpit, so he asked, "Brother Wu, you know how to pilot a chopper?" Wu Xueming nodded. "Yes, I'm not too comfortable with this person driving. I had flown a helicopter before in the army." "In that case, you are useless," Yi Mo looked at White Shark and said coldly. White Shark saw the situation and immediately realized that Yi Mo wanted to get rid of him, so he quickly said, "Don't kill me. I can still help you." "Oh, we'll see, come in then." Afterward, Yi Mo turned to Wu Xueming and said, "Brother Wu, start the helicopter." "Okay, where do we go now?" Wu Xueming saw that Yi Mo had come inside and flown the helicopter into the sky. Yi Mo thought for a moment and asked, "If Huang dies, does that mean you no longer have to run?" "If Huang dies, of course, I don't have to run anymore. The one who wants to kill me is only Huang, not." Wu Xueming suddenly stopped talking and looked at Yi Mo. He stuttered, "Brother Yi, you don't mean..." Yi Mo smiled and said, "Well, we were fated to meet. I am going to help you kill Huang. Besides, I still have some things I need your help with." He was going to help Wu Xueming kill Huang because firstly, he felt that Wu Xueming was a good person to him, and secondly, if Wu Xueming had the power of Metal River, it would help him in his escape. "Master, if you want to kill Huang, I can help you," White Shark suddenly said. Yi Mo looked coldly at White Shark, whose reaction was quite fast. The only reason he had kept him alive was because he had planned to use him to kill Huang anyway. Chapter 89, Fighting for Power. Chapter 89, Fighting for Power. Seeing that Yi Mo's eyes were cold, White Shark quickly said, "Huang is still waiting for the results. I'll just need to report later that the people have been captured and then take you back." Yi Mo wanted to hear these words. He turned to Wu Xueming. "Brother Wu, give the helicopter to him, I'll watch him. I trust he won't dare to play any games." Then, Yi Mo said to White Shark, "Fly the helicopter back and give Huang a call right now. Tell him that everything is normal." White Shark didn't dare to disobey Yi Mo's orders a single bit. Perhaps other people only threatened, but he saw Yi Mo's power and cruelty with his own eyes. He killed 4 fully armed men without moving at all, and at the same time, his face didn't change at all. This man was too ferocious, and White Shark was afraid of annoying Yi Mo, so he hurriedly said, "Huang told me, when I capture these people, I am to fly straight to Jing City." Jing City? Wu Xueming knew. This plane definitely didn't come from there, as it was almost 2,000 kilometers from here. How could the helicopter fly over? As if seeing through Wu Xueming's doubt, White Shark quickly explained, "I just came from Qiping. I was originally planning to stop Brother Wu, but I received your location at the spur of the moment, so I came. This helicopter is also modified, and its fuel tank can last for around 250 minutes. Furthermore, its speed is much faster than regular helicopters. Since it had already flown for around 20 minutes, it should still be able to travel for another 2.5 hours. After that, we can refuel at Wangchuan, and finally reach Jing City in one go." Speaking to here, he paused for a moment before continuing, "Brother Wu should know that Wangchuan has a petrol station controlled by Metal River, and because this helicopter has been modified, many parts are more advanced, so the oil from normal petrol stations can't be used. Although it could still be forcibly used, we may get problems on the way." Wu Xueming nodded and said, "We'll do that then. You can start flying straight to Jing City." He knew about the petrol station at Wangchuan. Yi Mo had studied the map and had seen Jing City before. That place was close to Russia and was also a borderline place. However, they would still need a few hours to get to Jing City. Yi Mo looked at the burning car down below and thought that even if someone realized what had happened inside the car, it would be a few hours later. By that time, he would have finished his business. It was as White Shark said. After 2 hours, the helicopter stopped at Wangchuan to refuel, and perhaps they had already received a message, but no one suspected a thing. After leaving Wangchuan, it was still not daylight yet. A little over 7 a.m., the helicopter stopped at a large private manor. The helicopter's speed was indeed fast, and Yi Mo estimated that it could reach about 430 to 500 kilometers per hour. Before, when Yi Mo had followed Wendong to that manor, he had already considered it to be large enough, but compared to this one, it was actually minuscule. Thinking about Wendong, he remembered the model and the data that Wendong gave to him, which were still in his bag now. He didn't know what it was for and didn't have the interest to look at it either. Wu Xueming saw Yi Mo looking over and seemed to understood what Yi Mo was thinking. He shook his head and said, "The people here are all Huang's. He would send my people away, but there's also a part of people who are only loyal to Metal River and not Huang. Huang is coming out." Wu Xueming saw a man walk out from a mansion and said. Yi Mo looked at the man. He was around 50, with triangular-shaped eyes and was very obese. He no longer had hair on the front part of his head and wore a big leather jacket, and 2 bodyguards were following behind him. "Take me down," Yimo said to White Shark coldly. During the flight, he was wondering how he would face Huang, as there should definitely be people preventing from coming too close to him. He even wondered if he had to go on a massacre to draw him out. However, he hadn't expected that Huang actually came out on his own. Haha, Wu Xueming. You actually dare to take an interest at my position and even steal the woman that I want. In order to wait for you today, I didn't sleep for the whole night. For every day that you stay alive, I live a day of unrest. A coarse laughter sounded. The arrogance and confidence in his tone were conspicuous. In his eyes, a few elite henchmen and a helicopter with a few AK-47 would be more than enough to capture a woman and Wu Xueming. Huang saw White Shark leaving the helicopter, followed by only one person that he didn't recognize, yet no one else behind them got out. He immediately stopped his footsteps vigilantly and looked at White Shark. Who is the person behind you? Stop, don't move. As soon as Huang spoke, the two bodyguards behind him had come up to stop White Shark and Yimo. Since he was here, Yimo wouldn't be merciful. He had so much on him that he no longer cared. A few nails in his hands flew out extremely fast. The two bodyguards didn't even mumble before blood spilled out from their forehead. White Shark started as cold sweat trickled down his back. He had seen all sorts of ways of killing, but he had never seen such a simple but effective way of doing so. It was too horrifying. Huang had a fast reaction. He knew things weren't good and immediately reached for his gun. However, Yimo didn't give him any opportunity, as the nail in his hands already flown out. Even at the moment of his death, Huang wouldn't believe that he would die so easily. Even if someone had charged in with a gun, it wouldn't be so easy, yet now, he was killed by someone who only raised his hand. He only felt dissatisfaction as his consciousness was starting to dissipate. At this moment, tens of men armed with swords rushed out, and just when Yimo was about to start a massacre, Wu Xueming behind him suddenly yelled, "Stop now. I will be responsible here. Are you going to rebel?" The scene immediately calmed. Many people didn't know if they should attack, but a few men raised their guns, and before their fingers even touched the trigger, they were killed by Yimo. Wu Xueming still had some authority. Other than a few of Huang's loyal followers, most of the people were still only loyal to Metal River. As for who took over after Huang's death, they didn't really care. They also knew about the fighting between Huang and Wu Xueming. They had seen too much of these fights already. The day that Wu Xueming killed Huang, Metal Mountain passed down his words, allowing Wu Xueming to take over. At the same time, Wu Xueming's men also came back, allowing him to fully stabilize his position. In a grandiloquent mansion in Hong Kong, a middle-aged man sat on the master chair. Opposite from him was a 50-or-so-year-old Taoist, and the two were tasting some tea. The middle-aged man was the big boss of Metal River, Metal Mountain, and if he hadn't said anything, perhaps no one would know that the second in command of Metal River was a Taoist. The Taoist who sat next to Metal Mountain was the second in command, the master, Xian Daram, 1. His powers were significantly higher than Metal Mountain, but he didn't have that much desire for power and put most of his time and energy on cultivation. Unless there were major affairs in the gang, he usually wouldn't show himself. Similarly, no one knew that the reason Nanqing didn't touch Metal River at all was nothing related to Metal River's personal power, but because of this Xian Daoren. "This Wu Xueming is not bad, your step was right," after sipping some tea, the Taoist opposite said. Metal Mountain contemplated for a moment before saying, "I thought that Wu Xueming could only at most survive Huang's pursuit. When I heard that he had taken a woman with him, I didn't even have any hope that he could survive, but I didn't expect him to be actually able to take out Huang. Huang has really been regressing these few years, and Metal River needs some fresh blood. I just hope that this Wu Xueming won't disappoint me, otherwise, he will be the next Huang." When he talked about these matters, Metal Mountain didn't have any emotional changes. It was as if this was naturally so. After a while, Metal Mountain continued, "I heard that Qian Baihe was recently on a rampage because of the death of his only son. But he'd best not touch our Metal River, otherwise, we won't let this go easily. You don't need to worry about this. I'm about to break through. I just came out this time to have a stroll so that I can focus on breaking through. Once I reach the Earth stage, I will go meet this Qian Longtu. I believe he is a man who understands reality, Xiandaren's tone was very calm but had an undeniable coldness. Notes. 1. Dao Ren is an honorific for the people who practice Dao. Chapter 90. Plan. Chapter 90. Plan. Yunbing had a beauty sleep. When she woke up, she suddenly thought of something and subconsciously reached out her hand to grab, but it was empty. He had left. Yunbing suddenly felt that she had lost something, and even though she knew that Yi Mo was leaving today, she didn't expect to leave without a farewell. However, she found a letter for her beside the bed. Sister Bing, thank you for saving my life. I'll come back for you one day. I'm leaving now. Yi Mo. Reading the words in her hands, Yunbing suddenly felt relieved. If he said that he would come back for her, he definitely would. Although she didn't have deeper feelings for Yi Mo, she just liked the feeling of staying with him and started wondering if she had been too lonely, but immediately, Yunbing couldn't help but worry about Yi Mo's safety. What? You killed Chen Longto's only son. No wonder Nanqing went crazy recently. His people are everywhere, and some had even come to our place, but because our boss didn't say anything, we didn't dare to start fights with them. I really didn't think that the one who had killed Chen Shiping was you. Hearing that Yi Mo had killed Chen Shiping, Wu Xueming was very shocked and couldn't calm himself even after a long time. Wu Xueming was elated after taking control of Huang's position and especially about being able to live forever with Yu Miaodan. However, after hearing Yi Mo's words, he could only be shocked. Who was Chen Longtu? He was someone who had a proper army and was even more powerful than the leaders of some countries. He could do things however he liked. Could country leaders do that? And Chen Longtu only had one son, and everyone knew this. Regardless of the underground society or the government authority, they would all focus on him. However, Yi Mo had actually killed him. Yi Mo looked very calmly at Wu Xueming. As soon as Wu Xueming showed any signs that he didn't dare to shelter him anymore, he would leave. He would eventually find a place where he could go. The reason he helped Wu Xueming was partly because he wanted Wu Xueming to help him for the time being. After all, his power was still too low, but as soon as he reached the third stage, even if Chen Longtu didn't come for him, he would look for him. He wasn't someone who could be hunted without consequence. Those who hunted him would eventually be hunted back by him. Brother Yi, originally, I was planning to invite you to join Metal River, but now, it seems that this plan is implausible. If you really joined Metal River, this would not only harm you but also Metal River. Wu Xueming had finally calmed down. Yi Mo nodded. Anyway, even without the incident with Chen Longtu, he still wouldn't join Metal River. That life didn't suit him. After staying silent for a while, Wu Xueming said, I can help you get a new identity, but you also need to change your face and find a place to hide for a while. This isn't something that can be solved by going overseas. Yi Mo learned the might of Chen Longtu from Wu Xueming, and since he had killed his only son, as soon as Chen Longtu would learn that he was the killer, only the craziest of revenge awaited him. Ever since he came here, Yi Mo had never felt such an urge to raise his power. He knew that if he didn't hurry and get stronger, he would be devoured completely based on the things he had done. Right now, he only had two ways of getting stronger. One was to immediately plant the silver heartgrass, and the second was to go look for purple heartvine in the desert, which required luck. Comparatively, the silver heartgrass was more reliable, however, it needed 2 years to mature, and Yi Mo couldn't wait for that long. If he didn't reach the third stage as quick as possible, perhaps his body would have disappeared after 2 years. He had made up his mind, he would find a proper place first and plant the silver heartgrass, then, he would immediately go to the desert. Both of these things couldn't wait. When he reached the third stage of Kai gathering, he would personally greet this Chen Longtu and tell him in front of his face that he killed his son. But what could Chen Longtu do? This hunt made him extremely annoyed. Whether it was the Song family or Nanqing, he felt extremely unhappy. After all, he was a cultivator, but he was hunted by mortals and had no choice but to run. This wasn't something he could accept. However, Wu Xueming didn't disappoint him, he really was a good friend he could depend on. Although he knew that hiding Yi Mo's identity might cause a lot of trouble for him in the future, Wu Xueming still didn't hesitate at all. Without Yi Mo, he would have been long dead, so he didn't even tell Yu Miaodan about Yi Mo's identity. Wu Xueming helped Yi Mo create a new identity. The name was Mo Yi, and in order to prevent recognition, Yi Mo drew a mark on his face. It looked a bit ugly, but the image on the passport had this mark. He was forced to do this because Nanqing's power was too great and seeped into almost every hole. Meanwhile, Yi Mo still wanted to find a stable place to grow his silver heart grass and didn't want to be discovered while he was planting it. That was too important to him. The weather in Jing City was too cold, which wasn't suitable for growing a silver heart grass, and besides, it was easy to catch attention staying directly there. Yi Mo took out some of the soil from his house he had grabbed before and asked Wu Xueming to help him get it analyzed. The results showed that parts of the southern cities were fine, but not all of them, while most of the northern cities and other places couldn't support the growth of a silver heart grass. At last, Yi Mo finally decided and picked Luo Kang in the Jiangnan province, which was neighboring Shanghai, one of the big cities with almost 5 million in population. The reason Yi Mo chose Luo Kang this time was irrelevant to Kai Wanqing. It was because the earth there had the most similarities to the earth he brought for analysis, and also, pretty much all the underground world was governed by Metal River under Wu Xueming. Another reason was that there was a flight straight to Dakumile, and from there, he could go straight to the desert. A week later, Yi Mo left Jing City for Luo Kang with his new identity. Although Wu Xueming had a lot of power in Jing City, Yi Mo still chose to take the train as he didn't want to raise a sliver of suspicion toward him. It wasn't because he was scared, but because his time was really short, and he didn't have the time to fight with these people. Yi Mo chose a compartment seat since he didn't take the money Wu Xueming gave to him. For Yi Mo, he helped Wu Xueming and Wu Xueming helped him, so the two were friends now, but just friends. If he took Wu Xueming's money, he would feel that he owed him and didn't like that feeling. Besides, Yi Mo had still around $50,000 in his bag. There wasn't a direct train from Jing City to Luo Kang, so Yi Mo took the train to Jing State first and changed train from there to Luo Kang. When Yi Mo got on the train, his compartment wasn't full, only 2 people including him. It was a woman in her 40s, she looked astute but was obviously tired as she didn't even say a word before falling asleep. Yi Mo thought that this woman was too careless. No matter how tired she was, she had to at least stay alerted since there might be some thieves on the train. However, there was only Yi Mo and her now. Of course, Yi Mo wouldn't stoop so low as to steal from a woman. Even if she had $1 million on her, he wouldn't even look at it. He found a seat and closed his eyes to meditate. At the same time, he thought about how to settle down once he arrived at Luo Kang and wondered if he should find a job first or rent a house. Chapter 91. So what if you steal it? Chapter 91. So what if you steal it? Yi Mo was sure that when he arrived at Luo Kang, he would need to find a proper place to grow his silver heartgrass, and until it was fully grown, he would not only waste time but also raise suspicion if he watched it germinate every day. Besides, although he had tens of thousands of dollars, that money would be gone soon enough as he would buy food and medicine. When the train arrived at the Shenyang station, another 2 people came in and the 4-people compartment was filled immediately. One of them was a middle-aged man in his 30s with a black bag in his hands. He had very dodgy eyes as he scanned the compartment and noticed the woman sleeping, so he smiled and greeted Yi Mo. "Hello, I'm Jin Jibing, and I'm going to Beijing. How should I call you, friend?" Mo Yi. Yi Mo's words were very simple as he didn't really like talking to strangers. This was his habit after long years of cultivation. Also, he didn't particularly like Jin Jibing's dodgy eyes. At this moment, the woman in her 40s also woke up and sat on the bed. Jin Jibing seemed to feel that Yi Mo didn't like to talk much, so he immediately greeted the woman. After a little nap, this woman became more spirited. However, she was quite talkative, and soon they started to talk about everything. Yi Mo heard that this woman was called Wang Yang and was going to Beijing too. However, she had also some business in Shenyang. He was no longer interested in their conversation and looked at the other person who came. This was a young man in his 20s who was wearing very ordinary clothes. He even had a few patches on his pants, meaning that his economic condition wasn't too good. Yi Mo didn't know why he would buy a bed ticket. However, this youth seemed scared of something, and once he came in, he went to his bed and no longer talked. He just clutched his bag tightly. Seeing his vigilant attitude, Why Mo thought that he was more experienced than that woman in her 40s. Little brother, do you have gold in your bag? Haha, I see you're very alert. It's okay, we're all strangers, but you just need to be careful, there is no need to hug your bag this tightly. Jin Jibing talked with the woman for a while and suddenly looked at that innocent youth, joking with him. No gold, just some tools to cure illness. This innocent youth didn't seem to expect that someone would talk to him and immediately stuttered. Oh, I didn't know you were a doctor, excuse my rudeness before, what's your surname? Seeing the youth's anxiety, Jin Jibing asked once again, however, his tone wasn't contemptuous. I'm Yu Erhu, my medical skills were passed down from my ancestors. The anxiousness in Yu Erhu's tone was still obvious, showing that it was his first time leaving his home. Ah, I really couldn't tell you were a doctor, where do you plan to go? Wang Yang's tone was obviously suspicious toward Yu Erhu being a doctor, however, she wasn't straightforward about it. Yu Erhu blushed more after being asked like that by Wang Yang. He mumbled, I got a ticket to Zheng State, so I'm going there to have a look. Yi Mo had already understood that this Yu Erhu had never left home before and probably didn't even know where he got the ticket to Zheng State. Although he didn't know what Yu Erhu's medical skills were like, he could imagine that he definitely wouldn't be able to survive properly there. Perhaps, he may even end up begging in the streets. However, Yu Erhu gave Yi Mo a good idea. If he started a clinic in Luokang and hired this innocent and honest-looking Yu Erhu to help, he would have time to cultivate and grow his silver heart grass. The most important point was that when he left Luokang, Yu Erhu would be able to look after it. Hearing Yu Erhu's words, both Jin Jibing and Wang Yang obviously didn't believe him, so they quickly lost interest in him. However, Yi Mo's interest for Yu Erhu had picked. Seeing that Yi Mo chatted a bit with Yu Erhu before he stopped and closed his eyes to sleep, Yu Jibing suddenly took out a magazine from his bag and a pair of glasses. However, Yi Mo was alert. When this Jin Jibing walked in, the way his eyes moved around didn't seem like he was short-sighted. What would he take out glasses for now? Yi Mo closed his eyes and didn't pay attention to him anymore, but he kept his spirit sense scanning Jin Jibing constantly. After not long, Jin Jibing no longer looked at the magazine and scanned his eyes toward Yi Mo and Wang Yang's bags. When he looked toward Yi Mo's bag, there seemed to be joy on his face. Of course, Yi Mo knew that he had tens of thousands of dollars in his bag, and with Jin Jibing showing such complexion, it meant that he had realized what was in his bag. Yi Mo was quite surprised. How did he know he had money in his bag? Did he have spirit sense too? But soon, Yi Mo figured it out that Jin Jibing didn't have spirit sense, but there was definitely something with his glasses. It was probably some infrared scanner or something that allowed him to see through things. It was already 10 p.m. at night, and Yi Mo pretended to be sleeping. He wanted to know whose bag Jin Jibing would try to steal first. However, he thought that he might probably be his target first because he had the most cash. If only he had a storage ring, he wouldn't have so much trouble. As expected, Jin Jibing brought his bag over to Yi Mo's side not long after Yi Mo fell asleep. He reached out his hand and opened his bag, stuffing all the cash inside his bag. Yi Mo sneered and didn't stop him. He knew that these thieves would take everything. He didn't need to get angry. He just used the blanket to cover his hands and at the same time took back the money Jin Jibing stole from him. Then, he also took everything other than Jin Jibing's clothes from his bag. He had spirit sense, so it was as clear as using his eyes. Yu Erhu had fallen asleep already, but Wang Yang had obviously noticed Jin Jibing's movement. However, Jin Jibing turned around and glared at her. She was so frightened that she immediately held her mouth with her hands, not daring to make a noise. At this time, the horn sounded. They had arrived at a station. Jin Jibing had already taken everything and grabbed the bag as he was ready to leave. At this moment, a girl in her 20s walked past the compartment and saw Jin Jibing's movement. She immediately knew that he was a thief, but more importantly, the victim was still asleep. The girl saw the thief and immediately yelled, yet Jin Jibing grabbed his bag and didn't care if other people found out as he dashed out of the carriage of the train. Ah, that thief stole your things, and you're still sleeping. This girl saw Jin Jibing run away and was sure that Yi Mo's possession had been stolen, so she reminded Yi Mo loudly. Yi Mo opened his eyes and saw this extremely worried girl and realized that she was a student. No wonder she had such a sense of justice. Seeing that other people were worried about him, he had no choice but to smile and say, I actually don't have much in my bag, so it doesn't matter if he steals it. You sigh, you should call the police immediately. I'll help you with that. This girl was really warm-hearted. Yimo thought that the people he didn't want to deal with the most now was the police, so he quickly waved his hand. Don't mind about this, I really don't have much, there's no need to call the police, but still, thank you. This girl saw that Yimo really didn't want to call the police, so she shook her head helplessly and crossed the carriage. Seeing this girl leave, Yimo immediately stuffed everything in the bag. Originally, he had $50,000, but now he had $20,000 extra. Other than this, there were also some miscellaneous things and a large stack of identity documents. Yimo stuffed them all in his bag. Although she didn't see Yimo steal everything back, Wang Yang saw with her own eyes Jin Jibing take a few notes from Yimo's bag, but this young man said there wasn't anything in his bag. Obviously, he didn't believe that he had his things stolen, and she couldn't help but shake her head. Chapter 92. On the Train. Chapter 92. On the train. Although Yu Erhu was very vigilant before, he was sleeping like a log now and didn't even realize what had happened. As though she was feeling guilty for Yimo, Wang Yang actually gave him $200 and said, Brother, I know you had your money stolen before. This $200 is not much, but at least you can save it for an emergency. Yimo looked at this Wang Yang in surprise. She actually felt guilty for what happened before, and still had some conscience. At this moment, Yu Erhu also woke up. He looked at Yimo and Wang Yang, obviously not knowing what was going on. Yimo pushed the money back and smiled. No need, I have money, I don't need yours. Wang Yang didn't expect Yimo to reject her offer. In her opinion, although Yimo was a bit better than Yu Erhu, he didn't really wear any famous brands either. It could only be said he was neat and tidy. Perhaps he would have an urgent use for his money later, but he just didn't know now. However, she became worried for Yimo rejecting her money. I really saw your money being stolen, but I didn't dare to say anything at the time because I was scared of him taking revenge on me. Take these $200, otherwise, I would really feel guilty. She was speaking the truth this time because she had seen too many accounts of people reporting thieves and getting stabbed. I said his money was stolen, but he didn't believe me. Now look, you saw it too. You have no money now, right? I'll give you $100 too. I'm still a student, so I don't have much money. At this moment, the girl who came over before had a bowl of noodles in her hands, and hearing Wang Yang's words, she also started to take out money. Hearing these two people's words, Yu Erhu seemed to understand that this young man had his money stolen. He didn't back out and also took out something covered in layers and layers of paper. Eventually, he took out 50 and said, Brother, I don't have much money either, so I'll help you with 50. My grandpa said there were a lot of thieves outside and told me to be careful. Looks like that Jin Jibing was a thief. Yimo saw these three people were warm-hearted. Although he was a bit frustrated, he was still grateful. This world wasn't completely cold, especially Yu Erhu. Yimo saw that although he had a thick stack of money, they were all 50s. Although this person was slightly simple-minded, he was a great person. Yimo saw the situation and could only take Wang Yang's $200 and said to the other two, I'll be fine with 200, take back your money. He could tell this girl was a student, she even said so herself, and Yu Erhu was obviously not wealthy. Although this woman in her 40s didn't wear any pricey brands and bought a bed ticket, she had obviously bought it purely to rest, meaning that she wasn't a wealthy person. Seeing Yimo accepting her money, Wang Yang was obviously relieved. She felt extremely guilty for simply watching the thief taking tens of thousands from Yimo but didn't dare to call him out. After Yimo had taken the money, he took our 3 herbs from his bag and gave them to Wang Yang. I won't take your money for free, take these 3 herbs. The 2 women looked stunned at Yimo, wondering why she would want his herbs. However, Yu Erhu stared at these herbs that he had never seen before and wandered off in his mind. Big brother, you're also a Chinese doctor, Yu Erhu said astonished. Yimo shook his head, I'm not really a Chinese doctor. I just have some understanding of herbs and like to collect them. At this moment, Wang Yang reacted and quickly pushed the herbs away. Big brother, I don't have any use for these things, take them back. Yimo smiled. Other people might not have a use for these 3 herbs, but you do. Why? The girl asked astonished. She had already been confused when Yimo gave the 3 herbs to Wang Yang, but now, she was even more confused when Yimo said this. Seeing that another person asked the question for her, Wang Yang didn't talk and wanted to see how Yimo would answer. Because you still don't have children, you should know your condition better than anyone else. Take back these herbs and boil them 3 times. Remember not to add anything else, just these 3. It would be best if you drink the crumbs too, then you would be fine. Yimo could tell that Wang Yang had some problems with her body. Not only was she not able to give birth, but in the long run, she would barely be able to live for another 20 years at most. He found these herbs in the borderline of Vietnam and still had some remaining. Normal people wouldn't know its use because these 3 had to be consumed at the same time. To be honest, he was missing a herb that replenished the essence of the body, but Yimo saw that Wang Yang's body was quite sturdy, so although she may suffer a little, it shouldn't be a problem. However, before she could drink this, he still needed to use his kai to help wash her meridians. Ah, you really can tell that I have. Wang Yang took the 3 herbs excitedly with her hands shaking. Suddenly, she bowed down many times to Yimo but still couldn't say anything. She had been married more than 10 years but just wasn't able to conceive a child. Not only was his mother-in-law's family looking down on her, but even her neighbors were insulting her. Even though she had looked at many places and spent a lot of money, she still couldn't solve the problem, and although her husband still loved her, she didn't feel good herself. The frustrated Wang Yang spent all her time on business running day and night tirelessly. Now that someone said her disease could be cured so simply, how could she not be happy? She was so excited that she couldn't talk anymore. She was already 39, and after another 2 years, she would truly start to feel hopeless. But soon she reacted and took out a card from her bag. This is a bank card, there aren't much inside, but it's my way to thank you. The password. Yimo couldn't say anything, so he stopped the conversation. Keep the card, I have enough money. Besides, how do you know that I'm not trying to cheat you? Then, Yimo with extreme speed grabbed Wang Yang's wrist and helped her unlock her meridians without anybody noticing. At this moment, Wang Yang still hadn't realized what was happening, so she just took back the card and suddenly thought, yeah, what if he's a fraud? But then, why would he say it out loud? However, the frauds nowadays have a lot of tricks, and some even pretend to be generous. Who knows? After thinking for a while, Wang Yang took back the card. Big brother, how about you leave your number with me? If this can really cure my condition, I must repay you. Yimo waved his hand. I don't have a phone, and there's no need for repayment. Furthermore, since you have already paid for these 3 herbs, there's no need for anything else. Big brother, your medical skills are so great, you don't even need to check her meridians, and you could tell her condition. Even my grandpa isn't as skilled as you. You Erhu suddenly said. Yimo said, Erhu, you are a Chinese doctor, and I think that you're quite a good person. Would you like to pursue a career with me in Luokang? I plan to open a clinic, and if you want you can help me out. Of course, I do. I don't have any good place to go anyway. Seeing that Yimo invited him, the lost Yu Erhu agreed without hesitation. At this moment, Wang Yang also calmed down. She looked at Yimo and then at Yu Erhu, but couldn't be sure if Yimo was a fraud. However, Yimo helped her before, so although she didn't know if these few herbs were real, she couldn't say much. The girl saw that Yimo was a doctor as well and admired him. Now that Yimo said he was going Luokang, she immediately said, I'm also going to Luokang, we can go together then. Wait, I'll carry my stuff here. Fine, we can help each other with more people. Yimo didn't mind this girl taking the train with them. Although this girl wasn't very pretty, she had a good heart, and she looked decent too. Besides, she had wanted to help Yimo before. I'll help you carry things. Yu Erhu was a very gentle person, and now that they were familiar with each other, he actually just left his bag on the bed and was going to help the girl carry her things. Just then, he had said that his grandpa told him that there were a lot of thieves outside, yet now just after one conversation, he was already very trustful toward Yimo. Yimo nodded and said, just go, I'll look after your stuff. However, Wang Yang looked complicatedly at the 3 and went back to her bed. She didn't talk anymore but was contemplating whether she should boil the herbs Yimo gave her or not. Soon, The girl moved her stuff over. It was just a case and a bag. This girl was very talkative and enjoyed a conversation with Yi Mo and Yu Erhu. However, Wang Yang didn't talk much, as if something was on her heart. From their conversation, Yi Mo learned that this girl was still studying in Luokang at the Jiangnan Medical University. Her name was Yang Yi. She was in her 3rd year and was specializing in practical medicine. The three enjoyed a good conversation and soon, the train had reached Beijing. Wang Yang bid the three farewell and quickly got off the train. After the train had arrived at Zheng State, the three got off the train and changed their train to Luokang. However, believing that Yi Mo had lost all his money, Yang Yi insisted on buying a ticket for Yi Mo. In the end, Yi Mo had no choice but to take out a stack of 10,000, telling her that his money wasn't stolen. Only then did Yang Yi backed down. There weren't any accidents when buying the tickets, and the three only used about half an hour time to get on the train from Zheng State to Luokang. This time, there were no beds but only chairs, and Yu Erhu had insisted on paying his own ticket, so Yi Mo didn't stop him. "Brother Mo, I heard that you need some certificate to practice medicine in the big cities. If we start a clinic in Luokang, will we be checked?" Yu Erhu seemed to not know how the world worked and had been simply instilled some simple knowledge before he had left. "Of course, you need a certificate, otherwise, you would be judged as a fraudulent doctor." Before Yi Mo could reply, Yang Yi answered. Yi Mo knew that he needed this, but now, as long as he had money, any certificate was easy to make and wasn't too worried. "Brother Mo and Erhu, you both don't have a phone. How will I contact you later on?" Yang Yi got along well with Yi Mo and Yu Erhu, but she was the only one to have a phone out of the three and saw that Yi Mo was definitely someone who wouldn't take the initiative to call another, so she asked. "When Brother Mo and I have found a place to stay, we'll call you." Yu Erhu had a good impression of Yang Yi. "Okay, Erhu, you must remember to call me. I don't have any people I know in Luokang. Knowing you and Brother Mo will make things easier when I need help in the future," Yang Yi said half-jokingly. For Yang Yi, although Yi Mo looked a little ugly with a mark on his face, she felt comfortable talking to him and stayed with him. The three got to know each other better and better as they traveled and, after a few hours, the train finally arrived at the Luokang station. Yi Mo and Yu Erhu arranged to meet up in the future with Yang Yi and separated at the station. Chapter 93. Do you think you can leave? Chapter 93. Do you think you can leave? Ninghai. For a few days, Ning Qingxue, who couldn't rest properly, finally calmed down. Whether it was the TV or the online news, they showed that the perpetrator of the case a few days ago had already fled Ninghai, and now, the police patrol in Ninghai had obviously calmed down. All these signs had meant that Yi Mo had really left Ninghai. "Shu Wei, I want to leave a few days. Can you look after the flowers I had planted here, especially this smallest one?" Ning Qingxue was just talking to Shu Wei when Li Mumei came from Su Jingwen's place. Hearing Ning Qingxue's words, Li Mumei was immediately rejoicing. "Qingxue, you want to go back to Yu State?" However, Ning Qingxue shook her head. "No, I just want to go out by myself and ease my feelings, and it's too boring staying at Ninghai all the time." She didn't even tell Li Mumei where she was going. "Qingxue, aren't you going back to Yu State? How about I go with you?" Li Mumei immediately felt things weren't right after hearing Ning Qingxue's words. After all, Ning Qingxue had never been to other places alone, so where would she be going? Shu Wei already knew that Ning Qingxue's identity wasn't ordinary, and she seemed to have something weird going on with Yi Mo, and although she never asked about it, she was still able to tell. And now, Ning Qingxue wanted to go out and even asked her to look after the flowers. It was not that she had a problem with it, and besides, she knew that this grass was very important to Ning Qingxue. As for why, she had no idea. Li Mumei saw Ning Qingxue didn't want to say where she was going, so she could only sigh and stopped asking. 2 days later, Ning Qingxue was finally ready to go and just reminded Shu Wei again to look after the grass for her before she left Ninghai. It wasn't convenient for her to carry Yi Mo's case, but she didn't feel safe leaving it at Ninghai, so she could only put the contents in a bag. As for those 3 beads, Ning Qingxue hadn't been able to find a string good enough to connect them, so she could only put them in the bag. She wanted to find the prettiest string and connect these beads before putting it on her wrist. But now, she wasn't able to find one, so she could only store it away. The reason she left Ninghai was that the last time Xiao Lei came, she said that she had met Yi Mo in Flowing Snake. So, Ning Qingxue wanted to check there since, in her opinion, Xiao Lei saw Yi Mo in Flowing Snake, so it meant that Yi Mo could quite possibly go back there again. She had done her research, and Flowing Snake was a place close to the border, a very chaotic location and good for escaping. Although she had thought more than once that Flowing Snake was too dangerous, she reminded herself that if it hadn't been for Yi Mo, she would have been long dead. So what if she died again? Besides, she also understood that if she didn't actively look for Yi Mo and just stayed in Ninghai, perhaps she wouldn't be able to see Yi Mo in her lifetime. She had a feeling that Yi Mo wouldn't come looking for her. Although she didn't know why Yi Mo came back to Ninghai last time, she was sure that Yi Mo didn't come for her. She noticed that her feelings for Yi Mo were getting more and more complicated. Initially, she had only wanted to use him, then she felt guilty and wanted to apologize and compensate him. However, afterward she was hurt while protecting the grass, and it was Yi Mo that treated her. She felt grateful toward him and even wanted to live with him like this for the rest of her life. But she felt that the more she understood him, the farther away she was from him. She was becoming a stranger to him, yet she wanted to understand him more. There wasn't a direct trip to Guilin from Ninghai, but there was a flight to the Xian Mountain, and from there, Ning Qingxue could go directly to Guilin. Nothing troublesome happened from Ninghai to Guilin. However, after arriving there, Ning Qingxue realized that she couldn't even find a ride to Flowing Snake. No matter how much money she offered, no one wanted to take her to Flowing Snake, and most of them even tried to persuade her that a girl like her shouldn't go to Flowing Snake by herself. However, Ning Qingxue was determined to go there, so in the end, she had no choice but to go to a rental company and rent a Volkswagen. She was ready to drive herself to Flowing Snake. Although a ride to Flowing Snake was very hard to find, the route could be easily asked for. After 2 hours, Ning Qingxue's car had gone into the twisted mountain paths, and she realized that she hadn't even gone half the way through, but it was already 5 p.m. After another bumpy 2 hours, Ning Qingxue realized that the road started to become flatter, and it was more desolate around. The howls of beasts could be heard from time to time, and the wind was blowing crazily on the trees. Being anxious, Ning Qingxue drove faster and faster. "Big brother, I didn't think there would be a car this late, should we move?" In a patch of forest that Ning Qingxue could not see, a few pair of eyes were already gazing at her. The man called Big Brother waved his hand and said, "No need, we still have other business tonight. Plus, a person who drives this model probably doesn't have much loot anyway. And, that Fang Nan's reach is really extensive now, there's no need to expose us for this type of car." Ning Qingxue would never imagine that she had avoided a disaster just because of the model of car she was driving. When she finally arrived in Flowing Snake, it was already around 9 p.m. The fatigued Ning Qingxue carried her bag and prepared to find a place to stay for the night and look for Yi Mo's news tomorrow. Flowing Snake was not without its hotels, but they were mostly for those bandits or merchants at the borderline, and those who are able to do illegal business here weren't normal people. These hotels not only had a place to live but also provided a bar for people to drink downstairs. So as soon as Ning Qingxue walked into the nearest hotel, she immediately attracted the eyes of almost everyone in the hotel. Flowing Snake did have a few women, but this was the first time that a girl who was as white, young, and beautiful came. Those who could survive in Flowing Snake had their heads in their hands, and these people were drunk almost every day. So as soon as they saw Ning Qingxue, all the people set their gazes on Ning Qingxue's body, even the 2 women that were there. Ning Qingxue looked at the countless eyes of hungry wolves and felt cold shivering uncontrollably. As though seeing Ning Qingxue shiver, a 30-year-old man sitting at the bar had lights shining out of his eyes. He carried a cup and walked over. "Girl, you're staying overnight? Don't worry, with me here, no one would dare to hurt you. Boss, get me the best room for this girl, it's on me." As soon as this man came over and talked, a lot of people immediately went quiet. Their lustful eyes also had some sympathy. Everyone knew that this person was called Shuwei. In fact, he has another title, Echidna. Not only was he cruel, but very hard to deal with because even Fang Nan couldn't do anything about the power behind him. Most importantly, this person was extremely lustful, and countless girls died at his hands. No need, I'm going to another place. Ning Qingxue turned back and was about to leave. Do you think you can leave? Girl, don't get cocky with me. Shi Wei saw Ning Qingxue with a pale face wanting to leave, so he immediately threw his cup on the ground and folded his arms, standing at the door staring coldly at Ning Qingxue. Chapter 94. The Dragon Crossing the River and the Local Snake. Chapter 94. The Dragon Crossing the River and the Local Snake. On her way over here, Ning Qingxue hadn't really met any bandits and thought Xiao Lei had been exaggerating since, although this was the border, it shouldn't be so chaotic. However, now she realized how chaotic Flowing Snake was. She had been harassed in public, and yet no one even tried to put some restraints on that man. I'll give you 3 seconds, pour some wine for me and repent, or I'll strip you here and f***ck. Shi Wei never had the patience to wait for a woman. For him, women were only for men to use. Ning Qingxue looked at the room full of cold glares and this Shi Wei's ferocious complexion with a pale face and her heart shaking. Even if she died, she didn't want to be our *ped here. Furthermore, she hadn't even met Yimo yet. Ning Qingxue, who had never been in contact with the dark side of the world, finally understood what unreasonable meant. She had thought that she was mature, but some things had to be encountered before one knew of its terror. I'm looking for my husband Yimo, his in Flowing Snake, you can't touch me. Even Ning Qingxue felt that her tone was pale and weak. She just heard Xiao Lei had been saved by Yimo here, so she said his name out loud to see if anyone knew him. Ha ha ha, your husband will be me from now on, what Yimo? If he's in Flowing Snake, I will make him disappear. Shi Wei laughed carkily and actually reached out his hand to grab Ning Qingxue. Extreme disgust flashed across Ning Qingxue's as she dodged aside once again. F***ck, Shi Wei was completely angry this time. There had not been a woman who dared to reject him. But today, this woman rejected him multiple times, making him lose a lot of face. Wait, Brother Wei, can you listen to a word of mine? A young man in his 20s suddenly walked over and said. Everyone looked with surprise at this person who had dared to disturb Shi Wei at this moment. Did he want to die? But when people saw who this was, no one added another word. The person who came up was called Rock, Fang Nan's personal guard. Although Flowing Snake wasn't 100% the land of the Pu Dao clan, there were no gangs who could rival them ever since the Vietnamese gang and the Philippines gang had been annihilated. Most people who came to Flowing Snake for business would give some respect to this local snake, the Pu Dao clan. Although Shi Wei was extremely unhappy being interrupted, he still knew Rock. This young man had always been beside Fang Nan and had some power in the Pu Dao clan, so although he was a dragon crossing the river, he didn't want to overdo it. He had no choice but to say, Brother Rock, if you have anything to say, please do, but I'm having this woman for sure. Hopefully, you can explain fast so I can go about my business. Although his tone was slightly polite, that arrogance was undeniably there. Obviously, although he respected Rock a little, he was not afraid of the Pu Dao clan. Rock's face changed but didn't argue back as he knew Shi Wei's origin. He could not only live well in Flowing Snake but many places at the border because he was a powerful person from the amphibian gang. For the amphibian gang, the Pu Dao clan could barely be called a local snake because the amphibian clan was the greatest clan at the border. Their activities were located at the borders of the Asian countries and did lucrative business. It was said that the amphibian gang belonged to Nanqing, and those part of the eastern underground world would shiver at the mention of this name. Flowing Snake was just a small stop for them. The consequences were imaginable if they offended the amphibian gang. So even when Shi Wei wasn't too polite to Rock, he didn't dare to say anything. If I may ask, you said that your husband was named Yimo. Which Yimo are you talking about? Rock came to the door and asked. He knew that Shi Wei was very impetuous. Just when Ning Qingxue didn't know what to do anymore, someone came to ask her. She immediately felt like she was someone who was about to drown but managed to grab a hold of a floating block of wood. It wasn't that she was afraid of death since she had already died once, but losing her loyalty was more horrifying than death. Otherwise, She wouldn't be throwing a fret about being looked at last time when she was treated by Yi Mo. When Rock asked, she replied immediately, I came to look for my husband Yi Mo, he came to Flowing Snake before. I knew from my friend and came to look for him. Then, Ning Qingsue described Yi Mo's appearance. Hearing Ning Qingshue's words, Rock was already sure that Ning Qingsue was talking about Brother Yi. It was not surprising, only Brother Yi would have such a beautiful wife. However, Rock knew Shuwei's character and turned around to his follower. Tell Brother Nan that Brother Yi's wife came. What do you mean? Shuwei felt quite obviously that Rock's words weren't right. It didn't seem like he planned on giving her to him. Sorry, Brother Shi, this woman belongs to our Brother Yi, you can't touch her. Then, Rock waved his hand, and 3 of his henchmen came up. Shuwei's face sunk. This means that you're acting against me. Does Fang Nan not want to stay here anymore? I'm telling you, I'm having this woman today, and even if Fang Nan comes, I will still take her. Brothers, take this woman away. As soon as Shuwei had spoken, the 4 tattooed youth, who were originally just standing at the side watching, immediately charged up. Rock's face changed, and after a moment's hesitation, he waved his hand and his henchmen also came. The 2 sides immediately formed a dichotomy. A mere follower like you dare to take my woman. Do you really think I don't dare to do anything to you? Wait until I break your leg and ask for an explanation from Fang Nan. Brothers, attack. Shuwei's words were full of ferociousness and cruelty. With Shuwei's order, the 2 sides immediately started fighting. The hack swords they hid in their clothes were all taken out and immediately, blood spilled everywhere at this hotel. Ning Qingsue retreated to the door in a panic. At this moment, she truly realized just how chaotic it was here. There was a crowd of people hacking at each other, but no one came to manage the situation. Because Rock had fewer people, they were quickly on the losing side, but just when Shuwei wanted to drag Ning Qingsue away and leave, another 20 people suddenly came to the door. Fang Nan's furious voice sounded, beat these bastards to the death. Fang Nan, you dare to touch me? Do you not want to live anymore? Hearing Fang Nan's words, Shuwei was worried and angry. He didn't think that the boss of a small place dared to touch him since he was comparable to an ambassador of a big nation to a small country here. Although the local snakes here didn't have to circle him, they wouldn't offend him for a woman. I don't mind you taking some benefits from my domain, but you dare to touch Brother Yi's woman. Do you want to die? Beat him hard. Fang Nan knew the consequences of offending Shuwei, but he was already respecting Yi Mo like a god, and this woman was his wife. How would he let other people touch her? Not only that, he was going to show his attitude for Ning Qingsue to see, otherwise, he wouldn't be able to explain himself to Yi Mo. Chapter 95. The Second Beautiful Lady Who Comes to Flowing Snake. Chapter 95. The second beautiful lady who comes to Flowing Snake with the men Fang Nan had brought. Shuwei didn't have the slightest ability to resist before having one leg broken. However, Fang Nan didn't dare to kill him. Although he didn't need to be held responsible legally for his death, the amphibious gang was too strong. If he had killed Shuwei, there would only be a war between the two. The reason he broke Shuwei's leg was mainly to show some respect to Ning Qingsue. Take your men and P*SS off immediately. Fang Nan didn't hesitate to kick out Shuwei. In this Flowing Snake, his word still had power. Although Shuwei was extremely angry, he couldn't do anything about it in Flowing Snake. If Fang Nan told him to leave, that was the only thing he could do. Even if he wanted his revenge, he had to wait until he reported the incident here with exaggeration. Shuwei took his few men and left this hotel. They just swapped for another one but didn't leave Flowing Snake. One reason was that it was already late, and he had a broken leg, so they had nowhere else to go. Another one was that even if Fang Nan knew that he hadn't left Flowing Snake, Fang Nan wouldn't go look for him. Fang Nan indeed knew that Shuwei hadn't left Flowing Snake, but he didn't dare to do things over the top. If it was regarding the incident with Ning Qingsue, he had the rights to, but if he were to kick Shuwei out of Flowing Snake, then he wouldn't have any justification. If he was stronger, then it didn't matter if he was being unreasonable or not, but no matter how strong he was, he wouldn't be stronger than the amphibious clan. Ning Qingxue stared dumbfoundedly at the fight that had started because of her. It started fast and finished fast and left a ground full of blood. She didn't think that Yi Mo had such loyal friends in Flowing Snake. She felt more confused about Yi Mo, who spent his time growing flowers all day long. Then, she thought about how Song Shouan and Song Xiaotan were killed by him, plus what she had seen today. It seemed that what Xiao Lei had told her was true. Yi Mo really had great capabilities. Then why did she hear in Beijing that Yi Mo was a completely useless human being? Fang Nan saw Ning Qingshue's face and was stunned, as he thought that only someone like Brother Yi could have such a wife. This woman was a bit too beautiful. However, Fang Nan respectfully transferred Ning Qingxue to another special place and told her the things about Yi Mo in Flowing Snake. He even didn't hide the fact that Yi Mo had annihilated 2 clans. In his view, Ning Qingxue was Yi Mo's wife, so she must have already known about what Yi Mo had done. The more Ning Qingxue heard, the more astonished she was. She didn't think that Yi Mo had done so much in Flowing Snake in such a short period of time. He had beaten the bosses here to be respectful of him. However, what made Ning Qingxue disappointed was that Yi Mo didn't come back and seemed to have gone somewhere else. Ning Qingxue suddenly felt a little lonely sleeping at this borderline fort in Flowing Snake. She didn't know why she came to find Yi Mo. From the start, Yi Mo was just helping her. Even the marriage was fake. Did she love him, or was it because of something else? What if she really did find Yi Mo? What should she say? Was she going to say, "Sorry, I shouldn't have treated you like that before," and then no matter what Yi Mo replied, she would go back to her own life? Ning Qingxue suddenly felt lost. Love. What was love? Regardless of whether she loved Yi Mo, was she going to find someone else to marry afterward? She had no intentions of divorce after marrying with Yi Mo, but was she supposed to find Yi Mo and tell him that she didn't want to divorce? Was that all? Ning Qingxue sighed. The more she thought that she understood Yi Mo, the more she was confused, which was very contradictory. Although she didn't understand Yi Mo very much, she felt that out of all the people she had met, no one was as magnanimous as him, and perhaps he was the one she needed. Originally, she had a skewed view of Yi Mo, probably because she didn't really understand him. After he was gone, she didn't divorce, and perhaps at that time, she had subconsciously agreed to be his wife. But before this, she had to find him. Otherwise, if Yi Mo marries one day while she still calls herself his wife, then that would be too ridiculous. Ning Qingxue had her principles. Although she was willing to marry Yi Mo, she wasn't someone to cry and beg for the marriage if Yi Mo didn't want her. Ning Qingxue twisted and turned in the sleepless night. Just when she slept for a while, the day was bright already. She didn't meet Yi Mo in Flowing Snake and thus no longer had the intention to stay anymore. But before she left, she wanted to see that pagoda where Yi Mo lived at. Although it had all collapsed, Fang Nan had sent people to rebuild it. Ning Qingxue wanted to see where Yi Mo lived before, so Fang Nan brought a few henchmen and went with her himself. Flowing Snake was so chaotic, he didn't want Yi Mo's wife to have more troubles here. If this sort of thing happened, he wouldn't be able to say anything to Yi Mo. Not to mention Yi Mo saved his life before and helped him get back the ruling authority here. Besides, Yi Mo was not hesitant in killing, and his gang didn't even have enough people for Yi Mo to kill. Ever since she had done her last mission, Kai Wanqing no longer had the mood to stay in the military. Every few days, she would call Luo Kang and asked her cousin, Zhu Man, if Yi Mo went over. But each time, she received a disappointing answer. Yi Mo didn't go to the company her cousin managed in Luo Kang. Of course, Kai Wanqing knew that Yi Mo lived a tight life, so since she had found him a job, why wouldn't he go? Was it because of his dignity? However, she thought that Brother Yi didn't seem like that sort of person. She thought about it a few times and decided to go look for Yi Mo herself. She felt that if she didn't go find him, perhaps this Brother Yi would never come looking for her in her entire lifetime. Although she was a bit bitter, she still decided to go to Flowing Snake and look for Yi Mo. Yi Mo told her last time that he was there, so since he didn't go to Luo Kang, it meant that he was still in Flowing Snake. This was the first time since Kai Wanqing entering the military that she applied for a family visit leave. Although Lo Lin felt that Kai Wanqing wouldn't be visiting her family, it was Kai Wanqing's first time, so although Lu Lin was dubious, she could only allow it. Obviously, Kai Wanqing didn't go see her family. She went to Flowing Snake to look for Yi Mo. She had experienced a lot more than Ning Qingxue, so of course, she knew what sort of place Flowing Snake was, but she wouldn't be scared. With her expertise, she wouldn't be afraid of even a few bulky men. Plus, she still had her bear cockroach and knew exactly how strong it was since she almost lost her life when she had been bitten by it. If it hadn't been for Yi Mo, she would have been dead already. Although Flowing Snake was very chaotic, it didn't pose a threat to her. It was just midday when Kai Wanqing arrived there. Just when she got there, she saw two people carrying Shuwei into a car to leave Flowing Snake. Although Kai Wanqing wanted to ask around about Yi Mo, she could tell that Shuwei and these men weren't good people, so she didn't even plan to ask from them. However, Shuwei's eyes were glued to Kai Wanqing. He didn't think he would meet two breathtaking women in 2 days. He still had such luck when he was about to leave. Fang Nan, so what if you robbed one away? I still met another today. As he looked at Kai Wanqing, his eyes were beaming. While still laying on the portable bed, he yelled without hesitation, "Take this woman away. We leave Flowing Snake, but I will have my revenge one day." Chapter 96. The Old Ginger Song Une. Chapter 96. The Old Ginger Song Une. Of course, Kai Wanqing knew how chaotic Flowing Snake was and wasn't even planning on talking with those hoodlum-looking people. She wasn't like Ning Qingxue. The things she had learned in the military weren't for show. She immediately kicked the two men who didn't even take her seriously and were kicked to the ground, and she didn't stop here, she went up and kicked twice again. Everyone could even hear the sound of bones cracking. Shuwei was very annoyed that the women he had seen today dared to resist, but before he was able to release his anger, he found that his two men had their leg broken by Kai Wanqing. Before he was able to scream, Kai Wanqing kicked again right on his leg that had been just plastered. Shuwei's howl could be heard almost a mile away, but in a place like Flowing Snake, no matter how much you screamed, no one would come and see. The remaining two men carrying Shuwei were already shaking. They had never seen a woman with such strong power who didn't even hesitate when fighting. There were a few youths who had seen Kai Wanqing in the distance and wanted to harass her, but they immediately backed off after seeing this scene. This woman dared to beat Shuwei. How could she care about them? In fact, if Shuwei had immediately chosen to send all of his men to attack Kai Wanqing at the same time, perhaps Kai Wanqing would have some trouble, but only two went first, and these two had such a whimsical attitude that the result could be expected. However, even if Shuwei took it seriously at the start, Kai Wanqing wouldn't mind. At most, she would have released Little Wolf, but if she did, people would die. Although Kai Wanqing knew how chaotic this place was, she didn't want to kill people so easily. Amidst the howls, Shuwei didn't think the second beautiful girl would be so troublesome. Shuwei, who was under unbearable pain, saw that this woman didn't seem like she wanted to punish him more, so he resisted the pain and called out, "Leave quickly." Kai Wanqing saw them leave but didn't care. She was prepared to ask someone, but unexpectedly, the person who walked up toward her was a woman even prettier than her. However, this woman had a few men following behind her and appeared to be the leader of a gang. Was the head of Flowing Snake a woman? However, this woman didn't seem to dress like that. She seemed more like a docile, well-educated girl. No matter what, it was better to face a woman than a man. Thinking about this, Kai Wanqing walked toward this woman. She wanted to ask about Yi Mo. When Ning Qingxue first saw Kai Wanqing, she felt that something was strange but couldn't say what it was. However, it felt very real. Didn't they say that Flowing Snake was chaotic? How come such a pretty woman, not one bit inferior to me, is here? She was startled. Fang Nan and several of his men were accompanying Ning Qingxue, who went to see the pagoda, and when they saw that breathtaking woman, they started to wonder what was going on recently in this place, since two women of such caliber came consecutively in 2 days. Fortunately, they hadn't seen Kai Wanqing kicking the other men, or their impressions would have been different. "Hello, do you know if a man named Yi Mo is here?" Kai Wanqing asked as she blocked Ning Qingxue's group. "You are also looking for him." Ning Qingxue was surprised as she looked at the woman in front of her. She was charming, yet had the look of a martial artist. It was not surprising that she had such a strange feeling earlier, almost as if she had a sixth sense. You are. Kai Wanqing looked curiously at Ning Qingxue, wondering what Yi Mo's relationship was with such an excellent woman. Oh, she's called Ning Qingxue, Brother Yi's wife. Fang Nan saw the atmosphere was awkward, and obviously, this handsome-looking girl also knew Yi Mo, so he quickly introduced her. Meanwhile, he thought, Brother Yi is indeed strong, even the girls he knew aren't ordinary. Your Brother Yi's wife. That, Kai Wanqing managed to hold back one who used Brother Yi as a shield. However, she no longer had a good impression of Ning Qingxue. Ning Qingxue also seemed to notice that she had some enmity toward her and didn't know what to say anymore. She didn't even ask what she was to Yi Mo as she was scared that she wouldn't be able to handle the result. The atmosphere was awkward once again. Even Fang Nan could tell what was happening. The two seemed to have a conflict over Brother Yi, and he was immediately worried. Both of these women seemed to be related to Brother Yi, so it was not good to help either of them. One seemed to be the legal and the other the hidden. He couldn't let them stare off like this. If they had a fight, he would be the one to suffer. Thinking about this, Fang Nan wiped the sweat from his forehead and said, It's already noon, and we're all starving, why don't we go eat first? We can talk about Brother Yi after food. He was the gang leader and always lived his life on the edge, but now, it was really hard for him to be the peacekeeper between two women. Other than Kai Wanqing and Ning Qingxue looking for Yi Mo, the Song family was also discussing about Yi Mo. Although all sorts of signs indicated that Song Xiaotan's death was related to Yi Mo, it was not surprising that he could kill Song Xiaotan. However, it would be shocking if he could actually kill Hu Qiu. Thus, the Song family still couldn't be sure that Song Xiaotan was killed by Yi Mo. Can we confirm that the Shi Ying who suddenly appeared in Ninghai and disappeared is Yi Mo? The Song family had two of their third-generation children murdered, so Song Qiming's anger could no longer be described. Although Song Shuowen was his son, Song Xiaotan was the brightest one in the third generation, yet he was killed in Ninghai. We can't be sure yet because even though he looks quite similar to Yi Mo, the face of Shi Ying is too blurred. The main thing is, Shi Ying's power is definitely higher than Hu Qiu. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to beat Pu Dongheng in one move. The greatest point of suspicion is that Fang Weicheng first saw Shi Ying at Ningdu district, and that's where Yi Mo was living at the time. Song Hai reported every detail of his investigation. It doesn't matter whether Shi Ying is Yi Mo or not, he has a great connection to Xiaotan's death. Besides, Shi Ying kills with metal nails and, up until now, we haven't found any ancient martial arts family that likes to kill with metal nails. The old man who spoke was 50 or so, Song Qishan. He was called Uncle Shen. His status was just below Old Man Song and Song Qiming. Although Song Qiming was the leader of the family in this meeting, his status wasn't the highest. Old Man Song, also known as Song Yuanyi, was the real leader. Old Man Song could stay calm if Song Shuowen died because even though Shuowen was his direct descendant, he didn't have much of a future. However, concerning Song Xiaotan, it was different. It was the grandson he had the most hopes for, but now that he was dead, Old Man Song could no longer be indifferent. Normally, he rarely came to the family meetings, but today, he came. Although he was full of rage, he still appeared to be composed. After hearing these few people, Song Yuanyi opened his closed eyes and said, "Continue to investigate the relationship between Shi Ying and Yi Mo. But we're only investigating, stop the hunt for Yi Mo for now." When everyone looked confusedly at Old Man Song, he said plainly, "It doesn't matter whether we have Yi Mo or Shi Ying's location, we just need to think of a way to make Qian Longtu know." Yi Mo had already raised the attention of that Yi family. What you need to do is to let Qian Longtu know that Yi Mo killed his son. After pausing for a bit, Old Man Song continued, "And, you need to let the Yi family know Yi Mo's excellence, but don't reveal that Yi Mo possibly killed Qian Longtu's only son. Other than that, we just need to enjoy the show. Besides, could it be so simple to kill Hu Qiu?" Near the end, Song Yuanyi's tone grew bleak. Everyone understood the old man's intentions and couldn't help to think that the oldest gingers were the spiciest. Making Qian Longtu deal with the Yi family, and at the crucial moment, all the Song family had to do was give it a push. The old man's intentions were to use this opportunity to completely smash the Yi family to a point where they would never be able to recover. Of course, Yi Mo didn't know that two women had been looking for him in Flowing Snake, and he didn't know the shenanigans that the Song family was using against the Yi family. Even if he knew, he would pretend he didn't know since he had no relationship with the Yi family anymore. He had opened his little clinic but was still operating without a license. Not only was the position far off the center of the city, but there were only him and Yu Erhu now. He chose this distant place because other places were too expensive, but the main reason was that this place was in an old private house, and when Yimo rented the old house, he had paid for 2 years' rent. There was a yard in the back of the house where he could grow silver heart grass, which was exactly what Yimo wanted. For him, business came after growing the silver heart grass. However, the third day that the clinic had opened, they had their first patient when they least expected. Yimo and Yu Erhu were awoken by a hurried knock in the middle of the night. Chapter 97, First Patient. Chapter 97, First Patient. A 5-year-old kid was carried inside. Not only were his eyes tightly shut and his face was pale, but his body was also convulsing. "Doctor, please save my son. The ambulance is coming, but they still need 20 minutes before they get here. I'm afraid my Zangson won't last more than 10 minutes. As soon as Yu Erhu opened the door, a middle-aged woman carried a small child inside screaming for help. Following close behind was a middle-aged man. His face was also showing how worried he was. Other than these two, there was also a woman in her 50s behind them. Yimo wondered if the whole family had come. The child probably had a relapse in his condition and needed to go to the hospital. However, the ambulance could only arrive 20 minutes later, and the family was afraid that his condition would worsen before the 20 minutes, so they came to this clinic trying to save the child's life for now. They were doing all they could in this time of crisis. Master, although Yi Erhu learned Chinese medicine from his grandpa, he realized under Yimo's tutelage that his medical skills were far superior to his grandpa, so he called Yimo master. Yimo was prepared to teach Yu Erhu medicine, so he didn't stop him from calling him master. The condition of the child now was obviously out of Yu Erhu's range of ability. Yimo walked over and said to that woman, "Put your child on the bed." The woman was panicking now, so hearing Yimo's words, she immediately put the child on the bed and didn't even try to ask Yimo any questions. Seeing that the child on the bed, Yimo took out his silver needles and was about to use them. "Wait, what do you want to do? We just want you to gain some time for the child to wait for an ambulance. Why are you taking out the needle for?" The middle-aged man had come back to his senses as he looked at the needles. They were originally so worried that they tried to get all the help they could get. From his child convulsing to now, it had already been a few minutes, but he was calmer now, yet, the doctor of a small street-side clinic was going to use needles on his child, so he immediately reacted. This was only a clinic that opened a few days ago, and he didn't even see a certificate here. Yimo stopped the needle in his hand and looked indifferently at the middle-aged man and didn't talk. For him, since the child was brought here, he didn't mind saving the child. But if the parents didn't even believe in him, he didn't need to mind others' business. He was a cultivator. Although he had spent quite some time on Earth, he still didn't weight the lives of normal people very much. However, he wasn't a heartless person either, so he would help if he could. When people believed that his money had been stolen on the train, they immediately came to help him, so he felt that he should also help other people. However, it was impossible for him to beg to treat this child. He had already scanned the child with his spirit sense. It wasn't a simple heart condition. His arteries were close to the bursting point, and if they fully exploded, this child wouldn't last long. Yimo understood the medical level here, and currently, the child's condition was incurable in this world. Seeing that Yimo stopped his hand, the middle-aged man didn't know what to say and was frozen. "Since you don't trust me, please leave." Yimo took back the silver needles. This set had been brought over by Yu Erhu. Yu Erhu had often been with his grandpa treating patients before. He really didn't like those people who didn't trust in the doctor, so as he saw the situation, he immediately said, "You are lucky that my master can help to treat your child." So, every time he and his grandpa went out to treat patients, people would be overjoyed and treated them with great hospitality. So why were they treated like this here? "Do you want Zangson to be like this forever? Move over." After saying that, the woman pushed the man aside and suddenly kneeled down in front of Yimo. "Doctor, please save Zangson. He was already like this last time. and if we hadn't been right outside the hospital at that time, he would have lost his life. Please. Her intentions were very simple. The doctor didn't even ask about the condition and took out the needle to treat Zangson, which meant that he really had a great ability. Otherwise, he should be asking about his conditions at least. Furthermore, she had heard that those doctors who used acupuncture were usually very abled since ordinary doctors didn't know how to use it. Yimo waved his hand and said, "Get up, I'll look at your child for you, but you're affecting my treatment by kneeling there." Hearing Yimo's words, the woman quickly got up. The man who was pushed aside by the woman saw the child's face go from white to purple and immediately realized that the child was in danger. However, the ambulance still hadn't arrived yet, so he didn't speak anymore. That older woman stared at the child soullessly and probably didn't even know what to say anymore. Yimo, however, quickly pierced the needle into the child's body. He didn't even need to take the child's clothes off. These people didn't understand acupuncture, so they didn't know that usually, the clothes needed to be taken off. However, Yu Erhu understood it a bit, but in his opinion, Yimo was already capable, so it didn't matter to him if the clothes weren't taken off. Of course, Yimo didn't use traditional acupuncture. He was using the needles as a bridge to pass his Kai into the child's body and gradually eased the damaged arteries. This wasn't a complete treatment, otherwise, he would have to repair the arteries. Yimo wouldn't dare to treat it now, whether he were able to or not. If such a troublesome condition was treated by his small clinic, he would no longer be able to keep a low profile like he wanted to. However, if he eased the condition, that would still be reasonable, so he shouldn't attract too much attention. In order to completely treat this condition, Yimo had to first reach the third stage, then use many other herbs. As Yimo used his Kai, the dead arteries in the child's body were gradually recovering their functions, the purple on his skin was continuously fading and, after 10 minutes, the child's face returned to normal. Even those who didn't understand medicine could tell that the child was getting better. The man and woman were overwhelmed with joy and came up to grab the child's hand. Meanwhile, Yimo was left to the side. At this moment, the siren of the ambulance could be heard. Finally, the couple remembered that their child was saved by Yimo and hurried over to thank him. Yimo waved his hand. "The ambulance is here, take your child to the hospital." Despite knowing that the hospital couldn't cure this disease completely, it would be good to get a checkup. The couple didn't dare to waste time and took the child into the ambulance. They didn't even have time to pay the fees. Kai Wanqing and Ning Qingxue, who were in Flowing Snake, had understood now that both of them didn't know where Yimo went. From Ning Qingxue's mouth, Kai Wanqing understood that Yimo had offended the Song family, which shocked her quite a bit. Although her grandpa was a soldier and so was her father, compared to the Song family, they were far off. "Wanqing, what do you mean Yimo could have possibly gone to the desert?" Hearing Kai Wanqing's words, Ning Qingxue had completely believed that Yimo wasn't an ordinary person, even though she didn't understand why Yimo was pretending to be a normal person and was even kicked out of the Yi family. "I feel that he is definitely going there. I was by his side at the time when he found that ragged goatskin map, and I helped him interpret the Tibetan words on it." His expression at the time was very joyful. "My guess is that he is probably looking for something there," Kai Wanqing said with certainty. Ning Qingxue believed Kai Wanqing's words. Yimo's actions were weird, regardless whether it was not sleeping at night but sitting under a tree, or sleeping on the stone floor. This wasn't something that could be explained normally. She was so heavily injured at the time, if Yimo really cured her, it couldn't be explained with simply some capabilities. She knew that she had an aunt who practiced the ancient martial arts, however, she had never seen her since. From what her mother had said, it was very hard for her aunt to come out. Ancient martial arts were something very mysterious, many people hadn't even heard of it. Was Yimo also a cultivator of ancient martial arts? But even if he did, he shouldn't be able to treat such serious wounds. The more Ning Qingxue thought about it, the more she was confused, so she could only stop thinking and looked at Kai Wanqing. "Do you still have that map?" Kai Wanqing took out from her bag a map that she had drawn later and passed it to Ning Qingxue. "I drew it afterward, but it's the exact same as the other one." Ning Qingxue took the map. It was very simple and just marked a few places of the Taklamakan Desert. There were also some lines with a few labels next to it that were obviously not on the borders of the desert, but at the very depth. Ning Qingxue had also heard of the Taklamakan Desert, the Sea of Death in the fables, but she didn't understand what Yi Mo was looking for over there. After staring at the map for a long time, Ning Qingxue said, "Can you give one to me?" However, Kai Wanqing said, "I remember the map very clearly, so you can take it if you want." Suddenly, Kai Wanqing thought of something as she looked at Ning Qingxue and asked, "You're not thinking of looking for him there, are you?" Chapter 98, Last News. Chapter 98, Last News. Ning Qingxue nodded. "Sometimes, ideas just pop out, just like how I came to Flowing Snake this time. I know it is dangerous here, but I always fantasize that I can meet Yi Mo and won't be in any trouble. If it had been before, I definitely wouldn't have done such a thing, but now, I can't help myself. I don't know if I miss him, I can't articulate that feeling." Hearing Ning Qingxue's word, Kai Wanqing asked more curiously, "Qingxue, didn't you fake the marriage with Brother Yi? You only wanted Brother Yi to block, and then divorce?" From Kai Wanqing's perspective, it was already very strange for Ning Qingxue to come look for Yi Mo in Flowing Snake, but now, she wanted to go to the desert. Did she not use Brother Yi as a shield? From the looks of it, why does she seem to have fallen in love with Brother Yi? Ning Qingxue shook her head bitterly, remaining silent for a while before saying, "I don't know why, it's just a feeling. Now, I thought I could hear about him from other people, but if there is no longer information about him, perhaps I will never see him again in this big world. I thought Flowing Snake was the last place I could find information about him, but I didn't think I could learn from you that he could have gone to the desert. If I just really lose my lead on him like this, I will regret many years later." Then, Ning Qingxue hesitated for a moment before continuing, "You don't understand me. If it were a few months ago, I would definitely not come to a place like Flowing Snake, much less the desert. Sometimes, you wouldn't even notice yourself changing. When you understand, you will discover that some people you are fated to not forget. Indeed, I used him as a shield before, but when I understood who he was, he had already left without leaving me any opportunity to apologize. Sorry, Wanqing, the reason I said those words to you was because he must treat you differently. Otherwise, he wouldn't tell you about the fake marriage. Sometimes, I really admire you. He would definitely not talk to me about this, yet he had told you." Kai Wanqing looked at Ning Qingxue's expression and suddenly felt sympathy for her. She should be like herself, but a bit different. When Ning Qingxue had discovered Brother Yi's excellence, Brother Yi had already left her. Meanwhile, she was different. She had discovered his excellence when she was in contact with him. From his tone last time, he didn't seem to have the intentions of marrying her. No intentions of marrying Qingxue? Kai Wanqing blushed and thought of herself, but she immediately shook her head. She had the same intentions as Ning Qingxue. If she didn't come to find Yi Mo, he would never go look for her. So this meant that Yi Mo had the same attitude toward her that he had with Ning Qingxue. They weren't in his heart. Does he have someone he loves? Kai Wanqing suddenly wanted to see what sort of person Yi Mo was in love with. Even excellent girls such as her and Ning Qingxue weren't in his eyes, so what sort of person would he like? Kai Wanqing suddenly stopped herself from thinking and raised her head to look at Ning Qingxue. "Qingxue, it's too dangerous for you to go to the desert alone. And Taklamakan is the Sea of Death. It is countless times more dangerous than Flowing Snake. Perhaps in Flowing Snake, you could still meet Fang Nan, but in the Taklamakan, other than Sandstorm, you get the scorching sun. It's pretty much certain death there." Ning Qingxue shook her head. "I know how dangerous it is, but did you know that not long ago I was someone who was mortally wounded? I've already experienced death once. I just want to ask him if I am really that bad and if it is so hard to just see me once. If he wants me to stop bothering him again, I will leave immediately. He gave me my life, it's nothing if I give it back." Ning Qingxue's tone seemed to get melancholic, and she couldn't continue talking anymore. Kai Wanqing looked at Ning Qingxue with sympathy and sighed before saying, "Qingxue, are you being reckless for Brother Yi? He won't be able to see it. Why would Brother Yi want your life? My life was also saved by him, am I going to give it back? And, perhaps it's not that he doesn't want to see you, but that he really is busy. Maybe, he doesn't even know that you want to see him." However, Ning Qingxue didn't talk, she was determined. Reckless or not, she couldn't calm down unless she could see Yi Mo once. Moreover, she felt that she was right. Perhaps this was the last news of Yi Mo and may never get to see him again if she missed this time. Even if it meant waiting on the rim of the desert, she would still wait. Seeing that Ning Qingxue didn't talk, Kai Wanqing knew that Ning Qingxue was really determined to do so. She suddenly thought about Ning Qingxue's words. This was perhaps the last news of Yi Mo. If he left the desert, then who would know where he would go next? The world was so big, who could find him? Thinking about this, Kai Wanqing suddenly said, "Qingxue, how about I'll come with you? I have more experience in the desert, and I've stayed in the military for a few years." "You're also going to the desert?" When Ning Qingxue heard that Kai Wanqing came looking for Yi Mo, she understood that Kai Wanqing must have felt something for Yi Mo, but she didn't expect her to also want to go into the desert. Kai Wanqing nodded her head firmly and said, "But before we go, we need to go to Luokang first. I have a company there. We need to prepare. Going to the desert isn't like going to other places. We need to carry all the tools and medications with us." Fang Nan watched as the two girls left before feeling relieved. It made his heart quiver that these two girls came to Flowing Snake. If something had happened. But although they had left, the things weren't done yet. Because Fang Nan offended Shui, he had to give Amphibious Gang an explanation. Otherwise, he wouldn't be able to stay here anymore. Fang Nan knew exactly how powerful the Amphibious Gang was. Amphibious Gang was under Nanqing. A real estate business 10 years ago near High Point didn't take them seriously, and in the end, Nanqing didn't even accept their apology and compensation. They were annihilated by them in one night. Every gang at the border knew about this, so for the people from the Amphibious Gang, the gang leaders at the border usually had a good attitude towards them. Now that Fang Nan offended Shui, although he was just a messenger for them, he was still someone of the Amphibious Gang. If they reproach him for it, he must be prepared to pay the price. And if they didn't accept his compensation, he still needed to prepare himself for war. However, Fang Nan knew that for something as small as this, the Amphibious Gang would be fine with accepting compensation. At most, it would make his heart ache a little. They shouldn't try to annihilate him. The things he had now were given by Yi Mo. If it hadn't been for Yi Mo, there was no way he would be able to take back Flowing Snake from the Philippines and Vietnam Gang. Plus, he was very respectful toward Yi Mo and felt that he wasn't an ordinary person. So he didn't regret that he had offended Shui for these two girls. Compared to Fang Nan's trouble and the two girls' search, Yi Mo's clinic had received quite the notoriety, at least within the nearby region. The second day he saved Zhangxin, the child's parents came to Yi Mo's clinic to thank him. They also took out $10,000 as gratitude. Yi Mo didn't take the money. Instead, he actually gave $30,000 to the children's parents. The reason was simple. He wanted this family to help him get all the relevant documents. The child's dad was called Zhong Po. He worked at the taxation office at Luokang and was a native, so it should be easy for him to do such things. As Yi Mo felt like he shouldn't show his face if he could, he had let Yu Erhu follow Zhong Po to make the certificates and clinic registration. Many things could be sorted with money. As for whether Yu Erhu really had the skills or not, no one cared. With the fervent help of the couple, Yi Mo's clinic had a great reputation despite being open for only 10 days or so. This was all due to their promotional ability. This clinic was called Hui Chun Clinic after all the documents were made. Yi Mo pretty much didn't manage anything and just sat in the yard preparing the soil so he could plant the silver heart grass. He left the clinic entirely in the hand of Yu Erhu. Luckily, Yu Erhu had experience in medicine, and with Yi Mo's frequent tutelage, the small diseases that the patients had were cured easily. Yi Mo gave $20,000 of the remaining 40 to Yu Erhu for him to buy some herbs and kept the last 20 to prepare the tools needed for the desert. The small clinic didn't even earn money, but Yi Mo didn't care. His purpose was to grow the silver heart grass. Everything else didn't have priority. If he could earn money that would be good, but if he couldn't, it didn't matter. The herbs Yu Erhu bought were cooked into soup or pills by Yi Mo and put into jars, and then told Erhu their functions. About medical skills, Yi Mo never kept anything to himself, so if there was anything he could teach, he would teach it to Erhu. He even taught him a set of fist technique and breathing technique. Although Yu Erhu was quite innocent, he was very smart and learned it quickly. Chapter 99, Luo Susu. Chapter 99, Luo Susu. Although Yi Mo had tried to reject the troublesome conditions, their clinic was still gradually rising in fame. Of course, it was due to the propaganda of the surrounding citizens, but it was mainly due to the discovery that many people only needed to come here once and their diseases were cured, which was different than going to the hospital. If you went to the hospital, you might need to go several days in a row. However, the only bad thing about Hui-chun was that its prices were a bit high. Normally, if a child went to the hospital, it would only be some over-the-counter medicine or needles, and the expenditure was around $100. However, the same disease at Hui-chun would cost $200. Nevertheless, since it was Chinese medicine, only one take of the medicine was needed, which was different to the 1-week recovery by the hospital. Many people still liked coming to this fast, effective clinic. Another saying was that Chinese medicine was neutral and more pleasant to the body than Western medicine. Originally, their business barely had any profit, sometimes there were even losses. But because of their astounding results, they became very popular. Luckily not much people lived here, otherwise, the clinic really wouldn't have enough people to treat every patient. Yi Mo had pretty much planted the silver heart grass and barricaded it as he was prepared to go to the desert. However, he realized that his business was getting better and frowned. Yi Mo's idea was that it would be fine as long as the business could make some money, it didn't need to be too good. He understood the logic of keeping a low profile. However, Yi Mo wouldn't take the money and not cure the patients. This wasn't his character. After thinking for a long while, Yi Mo could only tell Yu Erhu that the herbs were limited, and he could only see a limited amount of patients each day. The others would have to wait until the next day. However, Yi Mo hadn't learned about marketing. He didn't know that after he had made this rule, his business grew more popular instead. Yi Mo didn't have time to stay every day in the clinic and treat patients. Thus, he had no choice but to teach the basic means and recipes of some medicine to Yu Erhu. At the same time, he hired a girl to help, and only then did he get free time. When Kai Wanqing and Ning Qingxue came to Luo Kang, Yi Mo hadn't left yet. Sometimes, one looked very hard but didn't even realize that it was just right beside him. Ning Qingxue and Kai Wanqing spent almost 2 weeks to prepare while Yi Mo was still cultivating his silver heartgrass in the yard. When the two had already left Luo Kang and went to the desert, Yi Mo was still preparing for food and equipment. Although she knew that Kai Wanqing hadn't contacted her own family for a long time due to the incident with the marriage, Kai Wanqing's cousin could no longer remain calm after hearing that they were preparing to explore the desert. In the military, they had connections and people would look after each other, but the desert was merciless, and Kai Wanqing was going to the Taklamakan. It was dubbed the Sea of Death, and its ethnic name meant place where one could go in, but not go out. So Kai Wanqing's cousin started to wonder if the two girls were crazy, and why they would go to the Taklamakan for an adventure. So as soon as Kai Wanqing left with Ning Qingxue, she called Kai Wanqing's mother, Tang Qianping. You state. Ning Qingxue's mother was talking to a girl in her 20s. What was intriguing was that the girl had a face cover and wore a pale yellow dress. However, her dress wasn't the same style as the modern-day style of young people, it seemed like a dress of an old era. This girl had long, black hair that was casually held up by a water blue clip, and a few loose strands of hair beside her ears gave her an out-of-the-world sense. Susu, this time, Qingxue was mortally wounded, and we had thought that she would die, but we didn't expect that she would suddenly be cured in a single night, otherwise, I wouldn't have called you out. I know how hard it is for you to come out even once, sigh. Lan Yu regretted calling this woman out now because she knew it was hard for her to leave, so she couldn't bother her with trivial things. This time, her daughter was heavily wounded, and thus, Lan Yu thought about it before calling her out. However, she hadn't expected her daughter to be suddenly cured. She really would have had nothing to do if she still looked for trouble with the Song family when her daughter was perfectly fine. It doesn't matter, Sister Yu, if it hadn't been for you before, I wouldn't even be here anymore. Although I went to the hidden doors, I still remember Sister Yu's goodwill, so I would be able to come out a few more times for you, much less this once. Besides, something happened to Qingxue, so it is my duty to come and help her. As for that Song family, I will go have a look. The girl who had a face mask on had the voice of a charming bird, yet sounded spiritual. Just when Lan Yu wanted to stop Luo Susu from going to the Song family, Li Mumei suddenly ran in and said, "Auntie Yu, Qingxue went to the Taklamakan desert. When I called her, she had already arrived. I tried to convince her, but she said that she knew what she was doing and then actually shut her phone." Lan Yu suddenly stood up and spoke coarsely. "What? You said that Qingxue went to the Taklamakan desert? What is she doing there?" "She said that she was going on an adventure with her friend. When I asked who she was going with, she only said that it was another girl. 2 girls going to the Taklamakan, this." Even Li Mumei didn't know what to say about Ning Qingxue. Taklamakan, many people have been lost there. Qingxue, this child, why can't she let me worry less? She was very good when she was in Beijing, but why did she change so much ever since coming to Ninghai? Sigh. Lan Yu suddenly sunk back into her seat speechless. Hearing Lan Yu's words, Li Mumei deeply felt the same. The original Qingxue not only had her own opinion but would never be impulsive for something. In the company, she organized everything, and she would cooperate very closely. But ever since she married Yi Mo, she changed too much, and now, even Mumei could no longer understand Ning Qingxue and didn't dare to guess what Ning Qingxue was thinking in her heart. Now, she was really naive sometimes. This was greatly discordant with the original Ning Qingxue. Who would block a stick with their own body for a small blade of grass? Previously, she wouldn't have believed that Ning Qingxue would live alone at a far-off house by herself, or go to the desert no matter what. Had she fallen in love? They all say girls who were in love became foolish. The things they do are incomprehensible. However, Li Mumei didn't believe that Ning Qingxue would fall in love with someone either. Li Mumei still didn't know that Ning Qingxue went to Flowing Snake. If she did, she would have perhaps gone mad. "Sister Yu, don't worry, I'll bring her back from there." Luo Susu suddenly stood up speaking in a very soft tone. "How can that work, Susu? Taklamakan is the sea of death. You can't go. It doesn't matter how strong you are, the dangers of nature aren't something a person could defend against. I'll tell her dad and get professionals to bring her out." Lan Yu immediately rejected Luo Susu's proposal. "Don't worry, Sister Yu, trust me, I can find her and bring her back. I'm going there." Luo Susu's tone was full of confidence. Just when Lan Yu wanted to respond, Luo Susu was already gone. Lan Yu looked at Luo Susu's back and eventually didn't say anything. She knew Susu. She would rarely talk, but when she did, she would do it. "Aunt Yu, is she Aunt Susu?" Li Mumei had always heard about this aunt but had never seen her before. Lan Yu nodded. Luo Susu was a little girl that she had picked from the side of the road when she had just married and had gone to the temple to pray. Furthermore, because Lan Yu wasn't pregnant at the time, she had raised Luo Susu like her own sister. However, when she was just 5 years old, a friend of her father-in-law saw her and said that she had the root of wisdom and could enter the hidden doors. Then, they took Luo Susu away. Luo Susu didn't like to talk much since she was young and grew to be extraordinarily pretty. Although Lan Yu didn't want her to go there, her father-in-law said the opportunity was extremely rare. Besides, Qingxue was already 2 at the time, so she listened to the words of her father-in-law. Unfortunately, not long after Luo Susu was gone, her father-in-law had died, and they've been disconnected from her since. It wasn't until 12 years later that she came back and told Lan Yu the way to contact her, and if they ever had any troubles, they could go to her. Weirdly enough, the last time, she was wearing a mask too. Lan Yu also asked if Luo Susu could visit often, but she said that it wasn't easy. Although it was just one simple sentence, Lan Yu knew that it would be hard, so unless they had to, she wouldn't prefer to ask Luo Susu for help. This time, it was because of Ning Qingxue that she thought about finding Luo Susu. It was customary for the boys to take the father's surname and the girl to take the mother's surname, so she gave Luo Susu her mother's surname, Luo. Luo Susu had a thick white scarf around her neck showing only 2 eyes. People almost couldn't see her covered face, but her unique dress and astounding posture still attracted a lot of attention. There wasn't a direct plane to the Taklamakan desert, so Luo Susu took the plane to Wulumuki and then changed there. At the airport of Kualei, not long after getting off, Ning Qingxue and Kai Wanqing were stopped. Ning Qingxue subconsciously took a few steps back, the experience at Flowing Snake gave her a deep impression. Dad. Kai Wanqing looked at the man who stopped her and called out. She hadn't seen her father for a few years, and this sudden meeting took her by surprise. Kai Yu-jun, who was planning to be furious, suddenly had his anger dissipate when he was called Dad. His serious face also relaxed and looked at the daughter he hadn't seen for 3 years. Wanqing, come home with Dad. You're tuning in to the Celestial War YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.